It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
The right place. Welcome to this Saturday night edition of One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. I already said that. But we are here on WFUV 90.7, WFUV.org, WFUVSports.org, Facebook Live, YouTube Premiere, a lot of different places. Arguably too many places. But nevertheless, we are here, and this is One on One. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dylan Balsamo, along with my partner for today, Mr. Andrew Galata. How is it going, Andrew?
I'm doing really good. I mean, this is another really great time to watch sports. I mean, football, a lot of great games this weekend as a Saints fan. Saints Chiefs, I mean, this is what you live for as a Saints fan, playing some meaningful games late in the season. And I mean, the Mets, I'm also a Mets fan, and they're also looking good too. Some meaningful offseason, which is, to me, I'm just right now, first time in a long time where my two teams that I like are doing good at the same time. So that's really great.
This is, I agree with you, certainly a very exciting time to watch sports. And we're going to talk a lot of sports today. Andrew and I will be talking. We'll be joined later by our friend Michael Legan for a couple headline segments. We got our producer, Alex Woles, as always, with us today when it comes to FUV sports during the pandemic. Through him, all things were made. So we're always grateful to have him with us. But we are scattered across various homes in the area. Andrew, where am I talking to you from?
Long Island. So, yeah. It's
yeah.
You're coming from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I'm coming from the suburbs of New Jersey, not far from our Fordham campus.
Yeah, same here, right in the tri-state area.
So, finals did just end. Speaking of Fordham, how did finals go for you, Andrew?
Yeah, very good. I mean, now we're talking about sports. It's like a de-stressor. I mean, just like through these whole weeks, like I did a NFL podcast last week, like right after a final. It's a great de-stressor. Like you take the final and then you get to talk about sports for a little bit. It's really great.
I agree. It's certainly, there's something, the very nature of how we watch sports is a de-stressor in the first place. I mean, I think it was built for the working person to come home from work at night and watch Monday Night Football, Thursday.
Unless you're a Mets fan, then the stress is through the roof.
Yeah, no. It's usually more stressful than work.
Get Edwin Diaz on the mound, then it goes way up.
I'll tell you, because even when they're good, is like I remember
that's the most stressful.
Yeah, I agree. During the 2015 playoff run, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was putting off doing homework to watch them. And I would be so stressed the whole day about the game that I would not care about anything I was doing in school. And I was taking hard classes too.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing like with the Saints for me. Like, I feel like this time, because these December games, like the Saints clinched a playoff spot. So, like, they're meaningful for seeding, but it's not like so meaningful. Like, you get to the playoffs, it's almost like you're paralyzed to your seat. Like, if we lose this game, we're out. So it's like extremely stressful.
100%. And of course, this is a naturally very fun time of year anyway. It is mid to late December. And I will say, in this year of all years, it has been a very long year. And I'm just talking about this week. So, the feeling of the holiday season is upon us. And you can feel that in the sports world also. So let me ask you real quick, what are you doing for the holiday season?
I mean, it's watch sports. Like now finals are over. It's like, let's just watch a lot of sports. I mean, I feel like even, today and then tomorrow, I mean, football, I feel like is playing every day of the week at this point. I'm a huge football fan. So I feel like we're getting like Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, Friday. I mean, I feel like it's just like, that's basically what I'm doing. You get to hang out with some family and, have a good time.
It does seem to be in the NFL's usual business MO that they will invent a day of the week to play more football. I can't believe that hasn't happened yet. I can't believe they don't just own Sunday. They're going to need to adopt their own day. I always say that I can't believe Orlando, Florida is not just called Disney Florida. I think eventually it will be called that. I feel the same way about I think the NFL is going to buy a day of the week.
Just call Sunday the NFL.
It's just called the NFL or Goodell Day or something like that. I hope it's not called that. But nevertheless, let's talk about the show we have today because we have a lot of great stuff going today. We're going to start the show actually with an interview that Andrew and I did yesterday with Patricia Traina, who writes for GiantsCountry.com, hosts the Locked On Giants podcast, and just released it's a really cool book. It's part of a series called Big 50 about different teams. This is Big 50, the men and moments that made the New York Giants. And it's a really exciting book, and she was great to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, those books I think are really cool. And my brother's a huge Giants fan, so I recommended it to him. I was like, you should check this one out. And yeah, I mean, the Giants, I think right now they're in a really interesting spot. I mean, you're in a playoff run because the NFC East is so bad, but they've really gotten better this year. And that rebuild is really going well, in my opinion. And, hats off to Joe Judge. And they got a really big game Sunday night against the Browns.
I think the Giants of the last month in particular would have dominated this division all season had they been consistent like that. But nevertheless, we talked to Patricia Traina about a couple of those things, so that will be fun. After that, we will be joined by our friend Michael Legan, like I mentioned earlier, for our first of two headline segments of the day. We're going to talk about the NFL. And Andrew, like you said, your Saints, they're in a pretty good spot right now. Arguably the best spot in the National Football Conference.
Yeah, I mean, right now you lose a game to the Eagles, which stinks, but you do have a backup in with Taysom Hill, and now you're getting Drew Brees back, which I think is a huge jolt. I mean, it's just, I mean, he's a guy, leader of the team, obviously, and especially with this game against the Chiefs, I think it will be a very big elevation to that team. You get Brees, Mahomes, and I feel like even coming into this week, Brees wasn't missing his probably only chance in his career to go up against Patrick Mahomes. So again, unless in the Super Bowl, but if they don't face in the Super Bowl, this would be probably the only time they face, so it should definitely be a treat.
Yeah, I think we were all expecting a Saints-Chiefs Super Bowl a couple years ago, and a couple things kept that from happening. And we don't have to talk about that because I'm sure.
Yeah, please. The PTSD right now.
we want a nice show of you getting really worked up. I'll just bring that up really quickly. If the energy starts to go down, I'll bring that up, and then we'll be fine for another 3 hours after whenever that is. But nevertheless, after that, we're going to talk about the NBA season because by the time we talk about that, it will have turned Sunday when you're watching this. And that means we will be 3 days away from the start of the NBA season. This is going to be a weird NBA season, as it is for every sport. But nevertheless, a fun one. And, we got our predictions. I'll tell you, I got all my predictions we're going to talk about right here on this index card. And let me tell you, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think I'm going to sign it just so after they all become right, I can sell it and make so much money.
Prediction season's the worst. I have to say, it's always things change. That's why I don't love making big predictions like finals ones, because 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, you're wrong. And it's and it's like that. And it's on the internet forever now these days. So, oh my God, that's why I don't like it.
We'll have fun either way. And then after that, we're going to talk to, what a delightful interview it was with Julia DiCaro and Jay McManus, the co-hosts of Ladies Room, the podcast via Deadspin. You can find that podcast anywhere you like. The first 2 episodes are up, and they were wonderful to talk to. And then we're going to talk a little more headlines with Mike Legan. We've got to talk about Major League Baseball. We've got to talk about DJ LeMahieu, why the Yankees are being emotionally distant from him right now, oddly enough. We got an off-the-air episode up today with Mike Nastry from CBS Sports. We're going to make some NFL picks for this week, and then we're going to close it out with a special Christmas Day segment of One-on-One. This is going to be a very exciting show, Andrew.
Yeah, it should be really fun. And again, I was telling you guys just before the show, it's anytime you talk about the Saints a few times for me, and a New York sports show is a home run.
Yeah. Don't get used to it.
Yeah, I know. It's probably the only time that I'm ever, on this show that we'll be talking about the Saints this much. So I'm going to enjoy it.
Well, so needless to say, it's a very exciting show for everyone involved. We're going to take a quick break. In a little bit, Mike Legan will be hopping on with us to talk headlines. But before that, Miss Patricia Traina of Giants fame will be joining us to talk about her new book, to talk about the Giants. So that you will see right after this break. So stick around. We'll be right back here on One on One.
Be sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on WFUV, WFUV.org. You know the deal. My name is Dylan Balsamo, along with my partner, Andrew Galata. Thanks for continuing to be with us on this Saturday evening. But right now, we have a nice treat for you. We are joined by a very special guest. She's a senior writer at the Sports Illustrated site, GiantsCountry.com. She hosts the Locked On Giants podcast, and she's the author of a new book, which I'm very excited to read. It's called Big 50, Men and Moments That Made the New York Giants. This is a great get of a guest, and we're very excited to talk to her. This is Patricia Traina. Hi, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy holidays to you guys.
Well, happy holidays to you too. So let's start with this book. I'm very curious if I've books like this before have existed. Of course, the series of like 100 things Giants fans should know and do before they die. But this specific type of trying to tell a specific story in a certain, in a very singular book is kind of unique. So I'm very curious as to how the idea for doing this came to be. Did you hatch this idea? Did someone come to you with this idea? Did you talk to specific people? How did this book come to be?
Sure. Triumph Books, who is the publisher of this particular title, has a series out called The Big 50, and they're trying to, I think, cover all the football teams. They have some books on baseball teams. I think they're also doing hockey. So they didn't have a Giants book. They had a Yankees book. I think they had a book on the Rangers, but they didn't have one on the Giants, who, of course, are one of the flagship franchises in New York sports. So they came to me, I want to say about a couple of years ago now, and they said, hey, we have this title. We know you've been following the team for a long time. You've been reporting on them for over 20 some odd years. Would you like to write it? And I always wanted to write a book. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I know Giants history probably as well as, anybody who's been on the beat for as long as I have. And in putting the book together, I realized how it was kind of a challenge, because you think about it, the Giants have been around for almost 100 years. I think this is their 96th year in existence. So to narrow it down to just 50 men and moments was quite a task, but through a lot of revising and thinking about it and research, got it down to the 50 chapters that are in the book today. And it was actually a very fun project. I actually learned stuff as I went through the research and writing.
And, you were talking about how, you learn stuff while researching, writing. How is that, authoring a book, writing a book of this magnitude, different than just being a beat reporter, journalist every day? Like, what's the different techniques that are used, research, or like how do you tell a story differently, like that type of stuff?
Well, to do this particular project, I had to spend a lot of time, obviously, in libraries. So unfortunately, towards this past year with COVID and whatnot, I had to do everything remote. So having a subscription to newspaper.com, also being able to call on some of my contacts that I had made throughout my time covering the team. So I spoke to about over almost 24 players, former coaches, administrative personnel. Ernie Accorsi, the former GM, was kind enough to not only speak to me, but also write the foreword in the book. And so it was just very heavy research. And, whereas as a beat writer, you're just kind of sitting down, you have an idea, and, the research is, I don't want to say not important, but it's kind of minimal compared to a book like this. So it was just a matter of fact checking, making sure everything was right. Sometimes I would come across a source that had one number versus another source that had another number. So it was like, okay, which number is right? So it was really important to me to make sure I got everything right. And, that necessitated really going in and seeing 3, 4, 5 different sources in order to confirm what I was finding.
That actually leads perfectly into my next question, because you mentioned Ernie Accorsi, of course, the former Giants general manager who wrote the foreword to your book. And something that popped out to me just in the first couple paragraphs that he wrote are talking about how it's amazing to be a part of a franchise where the one family has overseen the history of this entire franchise. So I'm curious, in terms of the Mara family, did they know about this project that you were doing? Were they helpful at all? Because they kind of are, they are the Old Testament, if you will, of the Giants themselves. So were they helpful at all in this process? Were they part of the research you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. I got a chance to speak with John, Chris, his brother, and yes, they knew about it. Matter of fact, I told them about it before I started working on it. And John was very, very gracious with his time, as was Chris. And, we covered a variety of topics. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to speak with Mr. Tisch because he had some business dealings going on. So connecting with him was a little difficult, but the Mara family could not have been nicer and more cooperative. And the mere fact that they let me come into their facility, go through their archives, go through the stadium, the Legacy Club, where I took pictures of the various artifacts that appear in the book. I mean, that just really meant a lot to me. And I don't think the book would have been half of what it was if it wasn't for the cooperation I got from the Mara family.
And I kind of wanted to more focus on this Giants team now, moving over 5-18, but right in the thick of it for this NFC East title here. And Sunday they got a big game against the Browns here, as it's almost, I wouldn't call it a must win, but it's getting to that point as we're winding down this season. And it's looking like quarterback Daniel Jones isn't likely to play Sunday. So that means the Giants will move to Colt McCoy. What do you think the Giants' confidence level is with Colt McCoy at quarterback? I know he's a backup, but led them to a huge win against the Seahawks a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they were able to do that largely with their running game. And I think that's that's what they need to carry them through. No disrespect to Colt McCoy. He's a capable backup, but this is a very, very difficult Browns defense. You look at the pass rush, Myles Garrett, the interior of that line, old friend Olivier Vernon. Oh my goodness. The Giants have got to get that run game going. And that's what they did a couple weeks ago in their upset victory over Seattle when they didn't have Daniel Jones. And they weren't able to do that last week against the Cardinals. And as you saw, the Cardinals just absolutely teed off on them.
So to kind of sum up what you were just saying there, let's say the Giants don't win on Sunday, and there's the 2 games left. What is the outlook for the rest of their season? Is there the shot of them getting that spot? What percentage would you say that is?
Ooh, I would say if they can win, it's going to be tough. I don't know necessarily that they'll beat Baltimore. I think they can beat Dallas, but I would say they would probably have to win their last 2 games if they lose this weekend to have a chance. And of course, now they're going to need some help from Washington, who's going to need to lose. Now, Washington, I believe Dwayne Haskins is going to start. I think Alex Smith has been declared out for Sunday's game. So that could help the Giants' case. We'll know, obviously, come Sunday night where the Giants stand. But ideally, you want to see the Giants win out. I don't think they will. I think, though, if they can win the Dallas game and get some help from Washington, they're looking good. But, you listen to the Giants, they say they're not worried about it. And I say, well, why play the game if it's just to improve a little bit each week? You got to be playing for something, right?
Yeah, and I feel like the Giants probably will have to split the last two and these next two, and then probably win the Dallas game, I think, to make a good case to win that division. I think a big way they're going to do that is from this improved defense, which to me has been really impressive. They went from the third worst last year in terms of points to now being 10th. What do you think that the most improved part of this defense is from last year?
The defensive secondary has played a little bit better thanks to the addition of James Bradbury. And, of course, Jabril Peppers is having a really good year. And then you got to throw in Logan Ryan, who has been an absolute stud for this team. At the beginning of the year, I was a little bit concerned about that unit, especially given what was going on at the second cornerback. But that coaching staff has really done a good job getting that group up to speed. And you look at, the play up front with the defensive line, which was a strength last year and is still a strength. The defensive secondary, I think, has really made a difference. And I would say they would be the most improved unit on that defense.
So going back to Daniel Jones for a second, I believe it was only like 10 minutes before we hopped on this Zoom call that I got the alert that he was officially questionable for Sunday. You published an article, was it Wednesday maybe, about, you made it very clear that you thought he should sit this weekend. So let me ask you, what do you think is the right timetable for Jones to return?
I would definitely sit him this weekend. I thought he should have sat last weekend, as you noted. Look, Daniel Jones, his mobility is a big part of what he does. And to watch the Cardinals tee off on him the way they did last week was very, very disturbing. I kept sitting there, and every time he got hit, I was like closing my eyes. I'm like, oh no, because I thought he would get knocked out, literally, because the line was just so bad. I would not put him back in there until he has a little bit more mobility to him. He's got the right hamstring, the left sprained ankle. And if he can't defend himself, if he can't step up, if he can't scramble away from the pressure or a sack, Joe Judge said, oh, we kind of expected that. Okay, great. I get it. Quarterbacks get sacked regardless if they're healthy or injured. But do you really want to put them at risk if that line breaks down again, especially against that Cleveland front? So I'd sit him this week and hope to get him back for next week against Baltimore.
And my final question is, with this Giants team, let's say with Colt McCoy, let's say they win a few games, maybe Daniel Jones comes back, wins the Dallas game, they go to the playoffs. Do you think that buys Dave Gettleman another year to prove himself as a GM? He did hire Joe Judge, who looks like an outstanding hire. Do you think he gets another year to prove himself to try to build a winner here, or would you try to move on?
I know this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion among some Giant fans, but I do think Dave Gettleman will be back next year. Now, here's the thing. Will he be back as the GM, or will he be back in a consultant's role with a new GM? That's something to keep an eye on. I know there's been some reports over at SI. Albert Breer has said, that is a possibility that maybe the Giants bring in someone who has worked with Joe Judge before in New England or, somewhere along his travels as the new GM, and then Dave Gettleman stays on as a consultant. But I do not think that Dave Gettleman is going to be shown the door regardless of what happens, because as you said, this is a team that, back in the beginning of the year, John Mara said, I want to see progress. I want to know that by the end of the year, when I walk off that field, that this team is headed in the right direction. Well, can anybody out there who, might be anti-Gettleman say that this team isn't headed in the right direction?
Understood. Well, I think you might have lost a couple Giants fans when you said Gettleman would be back, but I think you brought him back when you said it would not be as the GM. So there's that. I want to ask you about, because I'm sure you've been asked about this from everybody in your life all year, since you have been on the sideline while America's biggest sport has tried to play in the face of a worldwide pandemic. So let me ask you, I guess it's a two-part question. How do you feel about the way the Giants themselves have handled this pandemic and the protocols they've taken? And from your perspective of the NFL, how would you grade the league in general of how they've handled this?
I think the Giants have done a pretty good job with how they have handled it. I mean, they have been very diligent about, the safety protocols. There've been a few slip-ups, but we don't know all the circumstances behind the slip-ups. James Bradbury, we know what happened there because, that came out, but we don't know, for example, how Graham Gano got it. We don't know how Will Hernandez got it, or Caden Smith, or Matt Parrott, or Dante Pettis. But for the most part, the Giants haven't had that big outbreak like you saw in Tennessee and in Baltimore. Regarding the NFL, considering they've had to, adjust on the fly, I think they've handled it okay. I mean, there's actually some things that I like that they've done that I hope they keep permanently once this, vaccination comes out and we get this virus hopefully under control. But I will say this, I'm kind of surprised that the NFL, right now there's still 3 weeks left, obviously, but I'm surprised that the NFL has made it this far without having to pause or cancel any games. And I give them a lot of credit because apparently they did take the lessons from other sports, the hockey league, the basketball, baseball, and they took those lessons and applied it to how they did stuff. So I tip my hat to them.
I guess we'll close with one more really quick question. There are a lot of really interesting chapters in Big 50, your edition of Big 50, if you will. Let's say I only have half an hour of free time and I can only read one chapter. I don't know if it would take me half an hour, or that's beside the point. If I only could read one chapter, what would be the one that you would recommend to me out of the ones you've written?
That's a tough one because I think they're all pretty good. Wow. I would say if you're into history, the Notre Dame All-Star Game is one because a lot of people don't know about that. That's really the game that kind of put the NFL on the map back in the day when, the league was just starting up. So if you like history, that would be a good one. The Super Bowl 46 one is good. We all know the story about how that game turned out, but what we don't know, or what's not widely known, is the unsung hero angle that I took for that particular chapter. So if you want to get an extra perspective that I don't think has been floated out there as much, that's a good one. And then, if you want to learn about some of the legends, I really enjoyed writing about Harry Carson, his chapter, because there was stuff that I learned about him that I didn't know. Lawrence Taylor was a fun chapter to write. I know that's not one chapter I'm giving you, but there's so many good ones, and it really depends on what your interest is. But I'd say probably that Notre Dame one, because again, that's not widely known by a lot of Giant fans.
All right, I will make sure to read that chapter, and I'm sure Andrew will too. At least I will make him. But thank you so much, Patricia. We really appreciate you being here. Hopefully the Giants win on Sunday. We'll see what happens, but either way, we're very grateful you came in, and congratulations on the book.
Thanks so much, guys. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.
That's Patricia Traina. You can go find Big 50, the men and moments that made the New York Giants. We will be right back in just a moment here on One-on-One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. We'll see you in just a moment.
One has a brand new YouTube channel. Subscribe to WFUV Sports to catch our simulcast Saturday nights and get notifications so you never miss another show. Miss the show? You can find on-demand segments, interviews, and highlights every week. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Running sports call-in show. I am Michael Legan, and I got you covered with the latest headlines. So let's start off in the NFL, where we have a bunch of things to cover. First off, we had a wild Thursday night game this week. The Chargers edged out the Raiders 30-27 in overtime. This one saw Derek Carr leave the game early in the first quarter, seeing former Titans quarterback Marcus Mariota enter the game for Las Vegas. He ended up going 17-28 for 226 yards, a touchdown, and interception. And of course, Justin Herbert continued to shine for Los Angeles in the win, going 22 of 32 for 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had a rushing touchdown in overtime, which ended up being the winning score. It seems to me that Justin Herbert is continued to set himself up to be offensive rookie of the year. So, Andrew, Dylan, let's get your thoughts on this game. What do you guys think? Any big takeaways, whether it be the Raiders, Justin Herbert, the Chargers? What do you guys think?
Well, I think this is a very it was a very offensively powerful game, and to be honest, to put it in a more general sense, at least for me, it's a direction that I kind of like that the NFL is going in. This was a very entertaining game. I'm not usually a fan of Thursday night football because I don't think every week there's a good enough game to also be having a Thursday night game. But in a league that has a little more offense, I think it's possible. So, I'm all about a little more powerhouse. And I think this game displayed that. So from a more general sense, that was my biggest takeaway from this game.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert, he's really good. I mean, I'll say this, a young quarterback, but great arm, and he's really good at reading defenses, and he won this game, basically. I mean, he had some really nice plays, and again, for the Raiders, it stinks that Carr got knocked out, but Mariota also looked pretty good. For a backup on Thursday Night Football, when you don't have that much time to prep, I mean, he had a touchdown, he kept them in the game, but right now, that's kind of, to me, the knockout punch for the Raiders. They go to 7-7, so they're probably going to have to win out the rest of the way for them to make this playoffs, but and especially with, it looks like Josh Jacobs is banged up, so not running the ball, and then that defense isn't playing well, but I mean, from this game, Justin Herbert, I think, solidifies his offensive rookie of the year case if he just keeps this on. I mean, he's been so good, 27 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions, and that's really what I take away from this.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I got to mention, I mean, Dylan, I respect your opinion, buddy, but there's one thing to have an offensive league. It's another thing to have an atrocious defense take the field. And let me tell you, Las Vegas's defense is an abomination and a disgrace to the game of football. You had John Gruden out there wearing an Oakland Raiders hat. I wish the Oakland Raiders were still on the field because that was just a disgrace. So, because, it's the pride, the history of the Raiders, that hard-hitting defense obviously doesn't exist anymore. So that was my biggest takeaway. I mean, look, they're hurt by injuries too. You got a guy that's a practice squad corner playing safety. So, I mean, look, it's not, you can't fault them too much, but look, there's a reason the Jets almost beat them. All right. It was an ugly game from it. And in overtime, look, I'll die on a hill and tell you that I like NFL overtime because to me, that's more representative of a real football game. I don't like this shootout style they have in college. I've gotten into many a debate with our colleague Nick DeLuca over that. Very heated. I'm not going to get into that. So I enjoy overtime. I thought this was a good overtime, but you got to the point where it was both these teams trying to lose the game. You got missed field goals. You got fumbled snap. You can't break a goal line on a quarterback sneak. I mean, this was just an ugly game towards the end, but the Chargers pulled it out. And Andrew, like you were saying, I think Justin Herbert has really solidified his case for NFL Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Even with Joe Burrow when he was healthy, I still think Justin Herbert kind of had this one locked up. But let me just throw out some other names for you guys. Let me know what you guys think in terms of, is there a possibility that maybe Herbert doesn't get this? And the first one that I would say is Justin Jefferson. What do you guys think? Wide receiver for the Vikings. He is having an unbelievable year. Already has over 1,000 yards receiving. The guy's averaging 16.6 yards per reception. Justin Herbert gets all the flash, all the focus because he's a quarterback. But is it possible that maybe Justin Jefferson brings in Offensive Rookie of the Year this year?
I certainly do think it's possible. And I think it is more possible than most analysts would like to tell you. Because like you said, Herbert's for lack of a better word, he's the sexy answer. He's a quarterback. He's the center of his team. And he's playing in Las Vegas nonetheless. So that's a point for him too. And not to diminish the season he's had, because he's been darn good. But Jefferson has, I wouldn't say he's single-handedly kept the Vikings where they are, but he's been a huge part of it.
He's filled for Stephon Diggs really nicely, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And for a first-year receiver, and there was no offseason really. So to get that timing down with Kirk Cousins, that was really impressive in my mind.
Absolutely. I think he's an offensive juggernaut in some way. He's something that ignites. He's a catalyst. A chemist could better explain this concept than I, a sports analyst. But I think he is of such a value to the Vikings offense and to the Vikings team in general in return that I think he's a great candidate for Offensive Player of the Year, and he actually might be my vote if I had one.
Yeah, I would say, look, if we're just going, obviously what I would say about Justin Jefferson, he plays with Kirk Cousins. Okay, this is not Kurt isn't exactly elite talent. Okay, so the fact that he's reeling in receivers from passes for him, that's one thing. So you got to give him a little bit of some credit for that. Also, another name to throw out there, I don't know if you guys are thinking about it, James Robinson, Jaguars running back. What I like about James is that, well, first off, we got to give him some credit. The guy's an undrafted player out of Illinois State. Okay, he comes into the league and he's already third in the league in rushing, has over 1,000 yards at this point in the season. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Can he maybe be a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year?
I mean, for me, he's a guy that you got to give him a ton of credit. Also playing in Jacksonville, which is basically the black hole of the NFL, I feel. So, you got to give him a lot of credit with that team, not a good team, and he keeps on producing numbers. And the one thing I got to say for him, he's obviously out there to prove something because undrafted, coming from a small school. And look, that Jaguars team, that Jaguars offense is not good. He's been the one bright spot. I wouldn't personally vote for him for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but I think he's in the conversation, which for him, I think is really impressive.
Absolutely. That's my take also. I think if you ask me, the big picture is I think Herbert and Jefferson are the two top contenders here, at least at this point in the season. Still a lot can change. A lot can change by the end of Sunday. And we're creeping up on Sunday as you at home listen to and see this. But I will support any unsigned player who brings any notoriety to themselves. And Jacksonville is a tough team to get excited to watch or get excited to follow. So whenever there's a point where something exciting happens for them, it's of incredible value to them as a franchise. I don't know if I'd put him up just at least for 2020 with Jefferson and Herbert. But I give him all the credit in the world.
Yeah. First off, Dylan, before we move on to the next headline, I will say it is easy to get pumped up for a Jaguars game when you're a Jet fan, hoping they can finally win, so that way your team can get a win too. So let me tell you, every week there's two teams that I watch. I watch the Jets, and I make sure they lose so they can get Trevor Lawrence, and I also make sure I'm watching the Jaguars to make sure they can win, so maybe we can win a game. All right. So let's move on to our next headline. And Andrew, I'm sure you're going to be.
You know what? I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I said, I can't get excited for the Jaguars. I watched your face react, and I was like, oh, I know exactly.
You knew I was going to say that? Yeah, trust me. Anyone that knows me knows that I have become a quasi Jaguars fan over these last few weeks. All right, so let's move on to our next headline. Andrew, I know you're going to be dialed into this one. So down in New Orleans, Drew Brees will be returning for the Saints this weekend after missing 4 games with a rib injury, a punctured lung. New Orleans will be facing off against the Chiefs as they attempt to regain the #1 seed in the NFC playoff standings. Obviously, Green Bay has it right now. This is going to be probably the game of the week, in my opinion. Andrew, let's start off with you because I know this is your team. Takeaways from Brees returning. Can the Saints reel in the NFC now?
Breeze is going to give him a huge boost. And whatever you want to say about Taysom Hill, I mean, he does some great things, but can't compare him to Drew Brees. I think we all know that. And this game, I think, will be really important. I think as a barometer, kind of where they're going to go in the playoffs. I mean, if they beat the Chiefs, I think they're up there as a contender in the NFC. Right now, you just lose a really tough game to the Eagles, which is like, again, you can talk about the Packers and like, oh, they have an easy schedule, but they're beating the teams on their schedule, even though they're not so good. Saints didn't beat the Eagles, even though it's with your backup quarterback. That's a very, very winnable game. So if you could bounce back here with Breeze, I mean, you're not going to have Michael Thomas. Again, that's going to hurt. But if you can win this one, that would be really big. And even going into the playoffs right now, you can go either way. That's why I love right now about the NFC. I think it could be any team right now. I mean, because you have the Saints, you have the Packers, you have what Seattle's doing. And it's very hard to bet against Russell Wilson. And then right now, the Rams defense, that's something that I don't want to face. I mean, so just as a Saints fan, Dylan, you mentioned earlier about that 2018, the Nolan O'Call game. I'd rather not see the Rams again in the playoffs just for that. But that's what I'm thinking right now. It's going to give them a huge boost. We'll see if they win it. It's going to be a close game.
Yes, the NFC right now is certainly wide open, and the NFC West, I would say in particular, is just really exciting. But in terms of New Orleans, that would be incredible if they're able to beat Kansas City this weekend, and I think they actually have a chance. I think that's going to be. I think it's going to be a great game, and I think the Saints might squeak that out. But we will talk more about that during our NFL Pick'em segment later in the show. So if you're still with us, stick around for that. But nevertheless, in terms of Taysom Hill and what he was able to do for the Saints, they were able to maintain some kind of stature above the very top of the NFC. And say what you want about the conference this season, but that is notable. So they're 10-3 right now coming into this game, right? Mm-hmm. 10-3, and now Drew Brees returns. That's if anyone's on the upward right now, if anyone's on the incline, it's New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing I want to add. The last game that Brees played full was that Tampa Bay game where they won 38-3. So that offense was just about clicking. Then he gets hurt. Taysom comes in, and look, you go 3-1 with a backup. I think no one would say that's bad. And over the last 2 years, they're 8-1 with backup quarterbacks between Teddy Bridgewater last year. Now Taysom Hill this year just shows it's a very deep team. And I'm really excited about this game because getting Brees back, you just want to see him back out on the field. And as I said before, getting one chance to duel against Patrick Mahomes, the competitor in Brees, he's going to be ready.
Yeah. And you mentioned their loss to the Eagles. And, say what you want about the NFC East and it is unpredictable in how bad teams will be from the NFC East. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to give the Saints the benefit of the doubt in that sense. And, every team loses a game that they should have won. That's why there's only been one undefeated team.
Exactly.
So I'll give the Saints that. But the momentum of Drew Brees coming back while the team is 10-3 and fighting for a top spot in the NFC, still first in the division. Let's not even we haven't even mentioned that. Last time Brees played a full game, like you said, 38-3. So all those pieces of momentum, I think, are going to mix together for something really special to end this season for the Saints. So if there's any team that I'm really watching in these last couple of weeks, it is the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I would just say. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, thanks. I would just say, I'm just really excited talking about the Saints team because I agree with you. I think that these next 2 games I think will be huge because you play the Chiefs, which everyone knows that. Look, this is the team to beat, in my opinion, and it's really hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I usually don't. And I mean, you'll see later in the pick'em segment because he's just so good. And that offense is just so electric. This Saints defense is playing better. So you're hoping keep it close. We'll see which way it goes. And then you play a big game against the Vikings. And the Saints have had their troubles against the Vikings in the past. It's on Christmas Day. It's a short week. If you win these two games, it's like, okay, maybe the Saints team's really for real. You have Brees playing hot. And then last year, when Brees came back from his injury, he was playing really good. I know they lost in the wild card round, but he, at the end of the season, he played just a great stretch of football. Hopefully similar there. Everyone was saying because he's older, it takes some time for that arm to get warmed up. He gets a 4-game break. It almost helps him. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, just to throw in my 2 cents here with the Saints. Well, first off, I'll say this. I enjoy watching Taysom Hill. I root for the guy because I like the underdog story. But I'm sorry, I can't help but get intrigued by the fact that the gadget plays and all that. So to see Sean Payton, first off, I don't know if I necessarily agree that he gave them the best chance of a win over these last few weeks. Maybe put in Jameis Winston, but look, Jameis will throw the ball to the other team half the time. So who knows? It's second guessing now. But I would say, look, I think the Saints, having Drew Brees back, the veteran leadership is a huge plus. That guy knows the offensive playbook inside and out. Is he the guy that won you the Super Bowl, all those years ago? No, he's not that player anymore. He's a soon-to-be retired future Hall of Famer who's, trying to get that second ring and just kind of cements his place in history. Is this Saints team going to win the Super Bowl? I got to be honest, Andrew, I hate to disappoint you. I don't think they're going to. I don't think that Drew Brees coming back is going to help them. Drew, when he was playing, I know we had some good games there. He can't complete the ball outside the numbers. We're looking at shorter passes, that down the field arm strength is not there. I like Drew Brees. I root for the guy. But it just, I question whether or not this is still the guy that can lead you to a playoff victory. And also at this point, we're heading into the final weeks of the season here. I really don't see the Packers losing the number 1 seed here. The Packers, in my opinion, really are, with Drew going out and now he's coming back, it's a little too much ground to make up in such a short period of time. And the Packers, in my opinion, have kind of cemented themselves as the team to beat in the NFC. So I don't know how you feel about that, Andrew, but I don't even know if the Saints can overcome that.
I think the number 1 seed for the Saints isn't as big as years past because everyone says, oh, they can lose on the road and they're not good on the road. They're a dome team. I don't agree with that because Alvin Kamara, you could argue that he's the best player on the offense. And that's just how he is. And I feel like the Saints they don't need Drew Brees to be that just amazing QB, elite QB, because you have Alvin Kamara, who's, to me, you can put him up there for Offensive Player of the Year. He won't win it because these last few games with Taysom Hill. But when Brees is with Kamara, and I know it's short passing, but everyone says he can't throw the ball deep. It's also hard to hit those precision passes in the shorter range because we were watching Taysom Hill and it wasn't a lot to Alvin Kamara because that connection has been developed. And Kamara, once you get him in the open field, it's almost good luck to defenses. You get Michael Thomas back. Right now, the Saints have only played with Brees and Thomas. They've played 10 quarters together only. Again, this offense, I think, is trending up. And I do think it's going to be hard to beat Rodgers. And I know that the Packers beat the Saints earlier in the season. And a lot of people are going to be like, okay, well, they're going to do it again. But this defense is playing good, which we haven't really talked about. This Saints defense is really good. And right now, as a Saints fan, I haven't seen a lot of good defenses. So it's like, oh, when are they going to choke it away? It seems like that's kind of the way you're talking about these Saints defenses. But right now, Demario Davis looks like one of the best linebackers in the league. And this secondary has gotten a lot better since the last time that Rodgers just carved them up in I believe it was week 3. Since then, they've been very good. And Marshawn Lattimore, Malcolm Jenkins, Marcus Williams. It's going to be very close. I'm not writing off the Saints. I'm not writing off the Packers either. I think if they end up matching with each other, it's going to be a great game. And probably the team with the most momentum will win it. But I'm not counting out the Saints.
Yeah, Ligon, I'll give you everything you were saying earlier. And I also agree with you that, the Saints are not even particularly my pick to come out of the NFC come the end of the playoffs. I still think the Packers are going to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. But to what you were saying about Drew Brees, like you said, is he the quarterback that won the Super Bowl, 10 some odd years ago? No, he's not. But he is able to adjust. He's like a late career pitcher. He's a late 2010 CC Sabathia. He was able to adjust. Precisely, Bartolo Colon. I should have mentioned him actually, because Bartolo Colon added a great offensive aspect to his game. But we don't have to talk about that right now. at the end of the day, Drew Brees was able to adjust his game. Maybe he is not at the caliber he was anymore, and maybe that's just not possible when you're not able to throw for power like he was earlier in his career. But he could throw 100 short passes and still be a darn good quarterback because he has a brain that is particularly wrinkly, a wrinkly brain. He's a smart quarterback, and I think that is something that, while we can say that Drew Brees is not the quarterback he was when he won his Super Bowl ring, we can't count him out as some kind of force at the QB position in the NFL.
All right, guys. So just one last headline here before we head to break. Elsewhere in the NFL, we were just mentioning the NFC East. Well, we got news out of that division. Alex Smith will not be playing for the Washington football team this weekend. He's got that calf injury. Instead, it will be Dwayne Haskins, the former first-round pick, who was benched all the way back in Week 4. He's not going to start for Washington. And Washington is currently holding on to that first place in the NFC East. The race is getting tight. You got the Giants right there. They're playing Cleveland this weekend. Can the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know. I don't care what Skip Bayless says. Maybe they can make a run. We'll see what happens. But, guys, what are your takes on Washington? Can Dwayne Haskins, can he close out the season for them, help them get to first place?
Well, I think for one thing, if I've learned one thing this year, specifically for this year, is to not put any money down on anything that goes on in the NFC East, except for the fact that whatever team comes out of it will lose in the first round of the playoffs. That is the only bet I will make about the division. But to the point of Washington, and I have my prediction of what's going to happen in the NFC East, and we'll talk more about that later. But at the end of the day, I think this Washington team is more faceted than whoever has been at the quarterback position. I think that's why they've been able to win the games that they have won. And, I had a conversation with our friend Chris Hennessy on One-on-One Nightly on a Wednesday night, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, where we talked about what kind of message is being sent when a quarterback is being switched. And I think in this particular sense for the football team, as I love to call them, I think it sends a message of we'll do what we got to do in order to win. If something's not working, we will adjust it because we are down the stretch here and we think we have a shot at this. So to me, if I'm a Washington football player, I take this as a message from the team of we're going to do what we can to win, and we got to take that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about Washington right now is that I don't think they're relying on like a quarterback. Their defensive line is just outstanding. Their defense is playing outstanding right now, and I don't think that this week's going to be really difficult because it looks like they're not going to have their running back Antonio Gibson either, and he's been really good because he helps them keep them on schedule. So does Alex Smith. And the interesting thing with Haskins is it's like, where are the interceptions? Is he going to throw them? Is he going to turn the ball over? Because the one thing that Smith was doing really well, not a lot of turnovers. Let's keep him on schedule. If nothing's there, we'll play the field position game and try to win that way in kind of an ugly way, but it was working for them. So, if Haskins can do that, again, that would obviously be big for them. But right now, this NFC East, as you said, it feels like once one thing goes, like it looks like, oh, Washington's going to win, or Eagles are going to win, or the Dallas is going to win. The exact opposite happens, and loses happen and stuff like that. But we'll see how long Smith is out, but that's difficult for them.
Yeah, I would just say real quickly before we head to break that, I think. Well, look, obviously, as we know, Dwayne Haskins would not be starting if it wasn't for Alex Smith. So getting hurt,
Nice.
So when Alex is healthy, hopefully he can get healthy for the next game. Dwayne, I don't know how well he's going to play. He's not going to start again. But can he win them this one game this weekend? Maybe, and we'll go from there. They're playing Seattle. It's going to be tough. So who knows if he can? But Seattle's defense is nothing to write home about. So. And honestly, of all the teams right now, I love Washington's defense, and I'm going to pick them to win the NFC East. I think they're kind of got locked. I don't trust the Giants. So, we'll see what happens this weekend, and I like them going forward. Not to win a playoff game, but at least win the division.
Creeping up on midnight, creeping up on Sunday morning as you watch this, that is Michael Legan. who heads our headline segment. He'll be rejoining us in a little bit. So it's not goodbye. It's see you later, Michael. So when we come back, Andrew and I will be here with you, and we're going to make some predictions about the NBA season as that also creeps up on us. So stick around. This is One-on-One. We'll be right back.
To support the WFUV Sports Department, visit support.wfuv.org to become a member or make a one-time donation. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
New York's longest running sports call-in show, 90.7 WFUV, WFUV.org, WFUVSports.org, Facebook Live, YouTube Premiere, whatever. However it is that you are joining us. Thank you for making us part of your evening into morning. My name is Dylan Balsamo. Partner Andrew Galata is with me. Mike Legan will be rejoining us in a little bit to do some more headlines. And coming up in a little bit, Julia DiCaro and Jane McManus are going to be joining us to talk about the new Deadspin podcast, Ladies Room. But before we get to that, it is currently, I believe it's about to be 11:58. It is 11:58 p.m., meaning at the stroke of midnight, as you are watching this, we are 3 days away from a new NBA season, an early Christmas present, if you will, to all of us in the sports world. So, Andrew, how do you feel about this upcoming? Give me your emotional feeling of how you feel about this NBA season coming up.
It's weird, I think, right? I mean, it's just like, I feel like we just ended the season and like, okay, we're starting. I mean, I guess a team like the Knicks where like you haven't played forever and it's like they just like erased out of my memory, like, oh, the Knicks play basketball. And so they'll be back. But it's just like, it feels like just a few months ago. It feels like it should be a lot longer. And I guess everything was streamlined. It was like free agency happened. Like it was like boom, 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 boom. Everything happened so quickly. And I was like, look, I'm here for it though. I mean, who doesn't want to see some NBA basketball? And look, the season, I feel like it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how the war of attrition works out. Maybe not early, but later in the season, especially now you're dealing with, the whole COVID protocol situation. Like how much does that wear on your team, especially just playing, 3 months ago? So I'm interested to see that. I mean, maybe not right away, but at least down the line, we'll see. Because I maybe like a team that didn't go to the bubble, maybe those teams are going to make a run late because they're fresh and they haven't played him forever. Like I could definitely see that. So to me, that's the most interesting thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just watching the Knicks preseason game last night to watch Miles Powell get a few minutes in the fourth quarter. My family being Seton Hall fans as we are. But nevertheless, I think you're absolutely right. Playoffs in any sport are all about fatigue. So it's very unpredictable, and especially unpredictable in this kind of season. But nevertheless, let's try and predict it anyway. So we have a couple areas that we want to give our thoughts of who we think might have certain awards, certain titles for this upcoming season, as peculiar as it may be. So let's start with our two local teams, and let's begin with the team we've already mentioned. That's the New York Knickerbockers. I don't think expectations are particularly high for them this year, but I think they are higher than they were last year. So let me ask you, Andrew, if you had to put a number on how many games they're going to win this year out of the number, what is that going to be?
I'm thinking, I don't know. I think this team will be better than last year. I think that Thibodeau will help them out, and just like, they're not going to like tank, I feel like he's going to at least keep them in a lot of games. I feel like that war of attrition that I was talking about, I think that's going to be a case. I think the Knicks will be fresher, younger. I think that will help. I don't know if they get to 30 wins, because I feel like that would be a good number for them, and maybe like just below 28. I think that would put them at 28 and 44, if my math's correct. But I mean, with Obi Toppin, he's a guy that I'm very happy that the Knicks got. I feel like they kind of got their guy. I mean, he's so athletic, and I feel like he's a guy that can really grow with RJ Barrett, Kevin Knox. I mean, this team is going to have to now start to kind of take that next step with these young guys, and they kind of want to be on that what the Nets are doing, in my opinion. I mean, they're trying to be a team that was really young, then they built a core, and then they were able to get out to get the KDs and the Kyries, and now supposed to be really good. So that's what I think what the Knicks have to do.
Yeah, Obi Toppin is an NBA level talent, and you could just see that watching him in these preseason games the Knicks have played. I think I'll give you a standings place. I think they're going to fight for 10th place in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to end up in 11th place. That's what I think. And whatever number of games that means, that might mean a little over 30 if my math is right, or my proportions are correct. But nevertheless, I think because I believe they finished in 12th last year, if I'm not mistaken, overall in the conference. So it's a little bit of a bump up. It's not much. It's really not much at all. And perhaps that number will continue to increase as the years go on, and the Knicks remember how to build a basketball team. But
I also think it's interesting with when you talk about the seeding in the Eastern Conference, it's just not good, especially lower. Yeah. So I feel like they can definitely do that. Like, I mean, to even finish 12th last year, I mean, I don't know, I forgot how many wins they had, but it wasn't a lot, and still finished 12th. I mean, so I feel like they should be better than last year. I think they will be better than last year, and if they're fighting for the 10th spot, I mean, you call that a win.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the team playing at the Barclays Center, and that would be the Brooklyn Nets. Expectations are kind of high for them this year. Some might argue too high. But let me ask you, Andrew, let's go by conference placement, because that's a good assessment of a team and how they're fighting in the playoffs. So you had to give them a place in the conference. What is your prediction?
The Nets are a difficult team to predict, because I could see either them just like being really bad and just like it just doesn't work. Like the locker room's an issue. You have too many stars. You can't control them. Or I could see them being, to me, the only team in the Eastern Conference to challenge the Lakers, because you have the star power. Like I can see either way. I think they'll be closer to the team that's clicking. I mean, it's hard to bet against KD and Kyrie. I mean, I know Kyrie has been, in the news, I think, for the wrong reasons in the last few weeks, but I mean, there's no doubt he can ball. I mean, we all know that he's a scorer. He's a guy that, if it all works, I mean, even their coaching situation's weird. You have like Steve Nash, and they're like, oh, there's no head coach. I mean, that's just, it's just weird, because you don't know, like, maybe that works, and like maybe it all works out. I mean, I feel like third or fourth right now. I'm going to put them in. I don't want to put them first. They could be. I mean, they have the talent to be, but it's hard to predict them there.
Absolutely. And different systems work with different coaches. I actually think it's going to work with Steve Nash. I don't want to bet too high on the Nets either, so I'm not going to put them in first, but I'm still going to err on the side of excess for the sake of entertaining predictions. So I'm going to put them in second place in the Eastern Conference, at whatever win number that brings them to. I think by next year, I think they're no doubt first place in the East, and they'll challenge the Lakers with their star power and the swagger of this team too is something worth noting. It's a culture that has shifted for the Nets organization. So I think that is worth noting, and I think this is the year that it's going to click. Not completely, but mostly. So I'm going to take the Nets as second place, and maybe that's too high, but I don't really care. So let's keep going. So let's talk about MVP. That's always an interesting conversation at the end of the season. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not always. But the Vegas favorite to win the MVP is again Giannis, home row from the Milwaukee Bucks. But let me ask you: is he your prediction to win MVP?
I don't think he wins MVP just because it's very hard to win 3 times in a row. Usually they just don't do it because, I feel like they didn't do it with LeBron. They didn't do it with KD, so they didn't do it with Curry. So I would be surprised if they do it with Giannis. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be someone else. I kind of like Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the way he's played in the bubble, really, I like the Heat team. I've always I feel like they're a team that can come up in here and they play very complimentary ball, which I like. They're well coached, which I like. And he's a guy that second year in the system, I feel like he's going to obviously get more experience with his teammates. Guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Gordon Dragic. And I feel like he could take the next step. And I feel like the NBA it doesn't go to the best player in the league. LeBron's not going to win every year. But I feel like it's always the player that makes like that big jump to superstar and he's dominant and he's playing good. And I feel like Jimmy Butler can do that.
That's a great pick, actually. And shout out to our producer, Alex Wolves, who is our resident Heat fan. But I think someone we got to mention here, and someone who I think is about to jump into the stardom conversation, even saying he wasn't already there, which you could argue he was, is Luka Doncic from Dallas. You look at his stuff from last year: 28.8 points per game, 9.4 rebounds, 8.8 assists. He turns 22 in February.
Yeah.
I think this is a year that the Mavs are gonna jump up in quality, and Luka's going to be the most important aspect of that. And I think the league is going to note that, and they're going to see his talent. I think it's going to be of national notoriety this coming year in the National Basketball Association. So he's my pick for MVP. But I want to get in a few more before we go to break. So give me your 2 coaches of the year, the East and the West. Tell me.
Oh, I agree with you with Dallas. I'm going to go Rick Carlisle. I think he's going to win it because I think they are going to be good. The Eastern Conference is always difficult because I really there's probably going to be a team that jumps up and does really good. I kind of like the Celtics team, so I'm going to go Brad Stevens. And maybe that's just I'm just kind of picking one of the best coaches, but I do like them. And I think they're going to have a really good year together. So I would say those 2 guys.
No one will fault you for picking Brad Stevens. That's a very safe pick, but a good pick. I'm going to take the maybe not as safe picks. I'm going to take 2 first-year coaches as my 2 coaches of the year. In the Eastern Conference, I'm going to take Steve Nash. I think this is going to work for Brooklyn. If my prediction comes true that they're second in the East, he should absolutely be coach of the year. I think he fits the dynamic of this Nets team right now perfectly. So I think it's going to click for them, and that is going to get the Nets a good spot in the Eastern Conference, and it's going to get him coach of the year. Similar thing of things clicking in the Western Conference, I'm taking Tyronn Lue as coach of the year because I think I look at this Clippers team from last year. A lot of talent, no doubt there. It just felt like one piece was missing, and I got a gut feeling that Tyronn Lue was that piece. So and maybe I'm completely wrong. I probably am, but it's they're 2 odd picks. You have some?
He's a guy, I feel like Ty Lue, he's a coach, with those stars, LeBron, Kyrie. He's a guy that I think that can work. Maybe it won't because, those guys, I feel like there's kind of a locker room rift because like Kawhi was getting and Paul George was getting kind of special treatment and players didn't like that. But I feel like with Lue, he knows how to manage stars and he's going to do it well. And I think that's really going to help them.
Absolutely. All right. We have another minute here. I want to get your pick real quick and we'll get Ligon's pick later in the show. And maybe our producer, Alex Wolves, will make his pick also. But your finals prediction, the 2 teams, who wins, how many games?
Lakers are going to win, I think. Then I think they're kind of the easy one. Again, I feel like that's kind of the safe pick, but I do not bet against LeBron James with Anthony Davis right now. I think they're kind of above the pack. Western Conference is very good, but that's just what I'm feeling there. And then moving over to the East, it's very close. I was kind of between the Bucks and the Celtics because Brad Stevens picked him, and I was like, I really like how that team's growing, and I think they're going to take the next step. And then I just feel like Giannis is eventually going to break down that door. And I'm just between those two teams. So I don't know. If I had to pick one, I'll go with Giannis just because he's the big superstar. And in NBA, you're going to pick the big superstar. But I'll take the Lakers to win probably like 6 or something, 7. But I feel like this may be the year that Giannis just breaks through.
Yeah, I love Giannis. I'm also going to take, I guess, what you might call the safe pick in the Eastern Conference and take the Bucks. We're all rooting for Giannis because hopefully he'll win MVP and then someone will pronounce his name and then we all know how it's pronounced, which is the ideal thing. I think they're actually going to take the Western Conference champion to 7 games, but they're going to eventually lose to it. Are you ready for it? I'm taking the Clippers to win it all. Ready? I know. Ready? Come at me in the comments. Just attack me. Fight me. I'm ready for it. I'm at DP Balsams on Twitter. Come at me. Fight me. I am so ready for it.
You got to be ready for the backlash. Like if it goes wrong, you don't want to get the cold takes, the freezing cold takes on you.
I'm too big of a Billy Crystal fan to not pick the Clippers.
Nice.
So that concludes this NBA prediction segment. I think we made some good predictions. And you know what? I'm actually going to sign this right now so that when it all comes true, I can sell it for a lot of money. All right. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a quick break. And then Andrew and I are going to be joined by Julie DiCaro and Jane McManus, hosts of the Ladies Room podcast via Deadspin. They were delightful to talk to. We can't wait for you to see this. So stick around. We'll be right back here on One on One.
WFUV is the flagship station of Fordham Athletics. Keep it locked right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVsports.org to catch every Fordham basketball game this year. We'll take you through an extraordinary season with live play-by-play and in-depth pregame and postgame analysis. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
New York's longest running sports call-in show, WFUV, WFUV.org, all those things. My name is Dylan Balsamo, along with my partner, Andrew Galata. Thanks for sticking with us, and we have a treat for you right now. Our two guests right now have separately written for Sports Illustrated and Deadspin and a handful of other places, but they have combined forces for a new podcast called Ladies Room. The first 2 episodes are up, and must I say, it is delightful. Julie DiCaro and Jane McManus have joined us. How are you two?
Good. Just
Thank
hanging out on a Friday, just, fully in our PJs.
Yeah, this is actually my Saturday, so I am still in my pajamas, still on my bed. So pretty much par for the course for the last 9 months.
The audience can't see it, but I'm wearing pajama bottoms as we speak, so I completely understand.
We're a couple pillows short of a party, I think, but
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly. Those feathery pillows that are all over the place. But let's get ready to move. First question is this podcast. How did it come to be? Did you two know each other before this? Was this your idea? Was it somebody else's idea? Was there chemistry tests that needed to be done? How did this come to be?
How did it come to be? Well, Jane, we did know each other in the sense that all women working in this industry know each other, more or less. But mostly Twitter. We hadn't actually ever done anything together before.
yeah, that's right. And I do remember, when I was having some discussions about whether or not to, switch the place where I was writing columns, what part of the allure of Deadspin was Julie and being able to do a podcast with her. It's
Oh.
something that I wasn't able to do where I was before. And I've always respected her. And I love doing a podcast. And, you know, before when I was at ESPN, I'd done radio and I'd really enjoyed that. So kind of wanted to see, you know, if I could do that again, and was really excited about the opportunity of working with Julie.
And then we got on the phone a couple times, and like it lasted a really long time, and we were just like cackling the entire time. So I think we knew pretty early on that we got along really well. And I was missing radio. I'd lost my radio job due to the pandemic in April. So I was hired at Deadspin with an eye towards doing podcasts. But until they sort of presented this to me and said, would you be willing to do a podcast with Jane McManus? Nothing had really been said to me about podcasts. And of course, who wouldn't want to do a podcast with Jane McManus? So of course I said yes.
I'd like to ask you guys, what was the goal or motivation behind starting it? I think it's a really unique idea and a really good idea. So what was the goal or motivation that you guys want out of this podcast, and, you know, how did it kind of come about?
You know, I'll start this, Julie, because I'll say that there are actually a number of really great podcasts that are being done by women in sports right now. And, you know, Burn It All Down is one of them that I've loved for years. And Nancy Armour at USA Today has a great podcast. Sarah Spain has a really nice podcast. Mina Kimes. So there's certainly work in this space. But, you know, for me, the way that I looked at it was, you know, it's great that it's not just one podcast of women talking about sports. I want there to be a million podcasts, women talking about sports. And so I kind of feel like, you know, let's flood the zone, you know, let's have something that kind of puts our stamp on it, giving access to, you know, giving a platform and discussing things off of the field and on the field with people that we find interesting, being able to take on some issues that we find and care about. So that's part of it for me. It's not that there aren't women in sports media doing podcasts, but again, I think the more, the merrier.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, you know, I get really tired of turning on post NFL shows or post MLB shows or post NBA shows and seeing just like four dudes sitting there. Like the fandom, whether we're talking about the NFL, which has by far, I think the biggest percentage of women watching, it's almost 50%. We are fans in a number that is not represented by most of the sports media. And a lot of women working in sports media these days are still like the only woman in the room at the place they work. And so I think that our voices and our perspectives get shut out of the conversation a lot. And, you know, for me, there's always a desire to try to rectify that by being really loud and making everyone listen to what I have to say. So a podcast is a great way to do that.
I totally agree that it can be very tiring to just watch a bunch of dudes on a post-game show. And to our audience, thanks again for joining us here on One on One, a show hosted by four dudes. But Julie, I have a question for you, because you have a book in the works right now,
Yes,
right?
I do. It's coming out in March.
Coming out in March. That's wonderful. Your anniversary of COVID. But anyways, the book is sidelined, and you know the subtitle, of course, Sports Culture and Being a Woman in America. But I'm curious as to how long has this idea been in your head of writing a book like this? How did it come to be? Who did you have to be in contact with to get it to happen? Tell us the story of the infancy of this book.
You know, actually, someone reached out to me from a publishing house and said, you know, I follow you on Twitter, and a lot of what you have to say I think should be expanded on, and that I think there needs to be a book and you should write it. So I went and I met with them, and actually didn't wind up writing for them, but the comedian Josh Gondelman introduced me to his agent, who's now my agent, and he helped me sort of take all the things that were swimming around in my head that I wanted to talk about and shape them into something that was, I guess, palatable for people to want to read. So I guess all these thoughts and stuff have been out there for a long time. So a lot of times I think that when you're the only woman in the room, you feel like you can't say them, or women who do say them get like a real backlash, you know, online, or, you know, if you're on the radio, like I was, you get a lot of it there. So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's kind of nice in that it's the one place I can say stuff without an instant backlash, right? I mean, they're going to have to read the book first and then go to Twitter or go to wherever, send me emails. They're not going to be able to just clap back at me immediately. So in that sense, I think it's kind of that was really appealing to me. So it was just one of those things that, of course, I think every writer wants to write a book at some point, but it really just sort of fell into my lap.
And Jane, I know you used to cover the Jets for ESPN, and obviously it's not been a good season for the Jets this year, 0-13.
Well,
And
unless you're talking about, next year's draft pick, then it's
Exactly.
an excellent season.
yeah,
Arguably the best year in that season.
yeah, especially
It's really,
especially
What's
with,
your goal? What's your goal as a team? Our goal is to get a really good draft pick next year. Maybe that's the way to look at it.
yeah, and especially with Trevor Lawrence there, I think that's
Right,
I mean, it could be
exactly.
one of the best draft picks in a really long time. But
And you
besides
know how
getting-
great the Jets are with quarterbacks too. So it's really important. It's really important to get a good quarterback and just absolutely destroy him.
Yeah. And I would say this is a big offseason for the Jets, especially because, I mean, you're basically probably going to, firehouse everything, probably fire Adam Gase, draft a new quarterback. But besides getting a new coach, getting a new quarterback, what would you do to start building a foundation for success in New York?
Get a new owner.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, honestly, I think that's where the New York problems start with a number of different teams, right? We've just seen new ownerships come to the Mets, and people are hopeful because of new ownership, not because of a new team or dynamic or anything, but it's money. It's cash. It's what you're willing to spend on players and how you're willing to conduct and the kind of personnel you get in and the direction you're willing to take. I think, long-suffering Knicks fans such as myself kind of look at that franchise as well and wish the Dolans didn't own it and see, what had been happening there for years and years. I think it's true. The same is true with the Jets. I don't think Woody Johnson's a great owner. He just doesn't seem like, I know we joke about, or I joked, you all laughed along politely, but I joked about the quarterbacks earlier, but it's really true. Back when I was covering the team, I saw Mark Sanchez and Geno Smith, systematically taken down. And bringing in, like when I was there, the Sanchez era, they brought in Tim Tebow as a backup, which was disastrous for young Mark Sanchez's delicate psyche. Because it was like the number 2 quarterback on the team was constantly getting more attention and questions about when he was going to start. I mean, it was a crazy season, but it's just moves like that. And he was, Tebow was brought in because he was a splash and he was a name and he had he had a following and a real kind of stake in the culture at that time. And, making decisions like that are very short-sighted, and they're not based on competitive decisions. And I think so, to me, I think you need an ownership group and that's going to make decisions that are going to ultimately lead to a more competitive team. There's no accident that, you have, the Rooneys and the Maras and being able to keep, not so much this year, but certainly the Giants have been competitive and have won Super Bowls and competed for Super Bowls in recent living history. And the Steelers are often competitive too. And, so I think ownership has a lot to do with it. And I don't think the Jets ownership is very good.
That is a very hot take.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
so where's the lie?
No, there is no lie. Not at all. Not at all. I don't think anyone's going to be particularly criticized for saying such. But Julia, I have another question for you. So not long before we hopped on this Zoom call, I happened upon an article of yours from Sports Illustrated in 2015 that caught my eye, of you talking about how you did not come up in the traditional way of sports writing that many sports writers do. So I'm curious as to, do you think, not just in the industry, but as a writer in your craft, do you think that helped you? Do you think that hindered you? Where do you think that put you in the general sense of things?
I think, gosh, I think that was the article where I was clapping back at Jason Whitlock for complaining that there's too many bloggers that don't go to journalism school. Like, I did go to journalism school. But, at the time that I graduated, the internet still hadn't really blossomed into what it is now as far as blogging. So there was really, your only option if you wanted to be a sports writer was go to like some small town paper and cover like high school basketball. If you're lucky, you get to cover high school basketball and sort of work your way up. And there were so few of those jobs, and they mostly went to guys anyway. So there wasn't really an option for a woman. And I think that going to law school and being a lawyer, like I got my foot in the door in this industry because I could talk about criminal justice things that were happening with players. And had I not been able to do that, I'm not sure that people would have paid any attention to me. So it's great. I mean, things are different now, you know. I mean, whatever you want to do, if you want to be on camera, you can start a YouTube channel, or, you know, if you want to be in audio, if you want to work in radio, you can start a podcast. If you want to be a writer, you start a blog. But it really wasn't like that back then. So there's far fewer barriers, I think, for people entering the industry. Now it's just really all about building up a following in your medium, and then, you know, transferring that to whatever it is that you want to do or wherever you want to work. But I think that at the time that I sort of got my foot in the door, being able to say that I was a lawyer first carried a little bit of weight with people. And for that reason, they were willing to listen and pay more attention to me, I think, than they would have otherwise.
That is so interesting, Julie. I love this about our backgrounds, because I was a paralegal for 2 years in New York City.
You were?
I was.
I worked at that.
Yeah, I worked at Cravath, Swain and Moore.
I had no
Believe
idea.
it or not. Yeah. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was before I went to J school. But we worked on a couple of cases, like we worked on the NBA antitrust case, and then Cravath at that time repped HBO, and there was some contract litigation in boxing with Riddick Bowe and Rock Newman, who was his agent at the time. And so I got really interested, and I'd always been interested in sports, and I was playing a ton of sports at the time, but I'd always really interested in that from the legal standpoint. And I think that helped me as well, because I was able to read, you know, court filings and figure stuff out. And that ended up being really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to tell people what they're looking at, or tell people like, well, okay, this is a, you know, sexual assault allegation. This is the way this is probably going to go. I mean, just being able to have that experience to say stuff like that. And unfortunately, then part of the problem is that, you know, you get pigeonholed into talking about that stuff exclusively. But, you know, so it's a little bit more difficult to transition out of that to talking about like X's and O's sports, which I got a chance to do in radio, and I was really grateful for. But yeah, I think that definitely, especially for women, I think that it's easier if you are a sports writer plus, to be able to, you know, like attract some followers, which is really what you need to succeed in this business.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, you guys are saying how like now there's podcasts, and like before there really wasn't that, or whether it be streaming, YouTube, all that stuff. Do you feel like the landscape of sports media will kind of stay like this for a little, or change even more? And I know that especially like sports, especially going to like Amazon and like starting that as well, so like more streaming games instead of network channels. Where do you think like the next steps for that are in the industry?
This is a great opportunity to mention that we had Andrea Kramer on our podcast, who does that broadcast for Amazon, the NFL broadcast on a weekly basis for Amazon, which is really interesting. I mean, I think that sports media is in the middle of a revolution right now. And this comes in from, you know, at Marist College, I'm the director of the Center for Sports Communication. And so I'm often thinking about where are the jobs that our students are going to get? Where are they emerging? Because, you know, as Julie was mentioning, it used to be that you started off writing at a newspaper and you'd write high school sports for a couple of years. I mean, I took the traditional route. But I think now that route has, you know, is all but shut down, especially given the financial pressure that the pandemic has put on the ailing newspaper industry already. And so you're looking at a lot of non-traditional outlets now for students to start working. When I started out, you would never have gone to work for a team, writing for a team website or doing broadcast for a team site. That was considered going from journalism to PR. Now that's completely different. And I think it's less about the integrity of the outlet that you work for, and it's more about the integrity that you bring and your own personal way of conducting business. So I think in some ways that puts more pressure on young journalists, because they are measured by their work, certainly, but they're going to be working and doing work that just wouldn't necessarily be, it doesn't groom them in the same way. They can't put it forward in the same way. You may be writing headlines for a web outlet as your first job. There are just a lot of differences, but I do think we're seeing, in some ways that's great because it's democracy in action. If you can have a blog and get your voice out there or break news, but at the same time, it does mean that everyone coming into the industry now really does have to pick their path. And I think in some ways it's like jumping from, there's this scene in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs of the hero having to rescue someone by jumping from fry to fry in a vat of boiling oil. And I kind of feel like your first couple of jobs in the media industry are jumping from fry to fry on a vat of boiling oil, to be optimistic about it.
Yeah, and I think as far as the divergent streams and the different channels that you have options, I mean, obviously a lot of women don't like tune into sports radio or do things like that because they don't feel welcome, right? So I mean, having Hannah Storm and Andrea Kramer doing Calling the Game on Amazon Prime, and having that be a place where women can go, where they feel more comfortable and they feel more accepted as fans, and it's also a great thing to have on in your house when you have kids, to normalize women being in sports and calling games. That's terrific. And I think that, hopefully we continue to expand in that direction. Everybody's, cash strapped right now because of the pandemic, but, I mean, for the same thing I know baseball, we've had multiple streams, and I don't necessarily want to watch a baseball game and have, some like 70-year-old announcers who are bagging on statistics and talking about how they've ruined the game. I'd rather flip over to another channel and listen to Jason Benetti, who's very well versed in sabermetrics, talk about the game. So I think it is more entrees into every sport for people, for different kinds of people, and that's, I think, a good thing.
We have one last question. We've talked about how the landscape of sports media is changing, which obviously means it has changed since the two of you started. So let me ask you, if we were to, I don't know if we have any young female aspiring sports media personalities watching. I don't know our Nielsen ratings or whatever you call them on the internet. But and I'm sure, Jane, you probably know a few yourself, given your position at Marist. But if there's one thing you can say to them if they're watching, what would that thing be to encourage them?
Well, I mean, absolutely. Keep, you belong is what is my big message to young men and young women in the industry, but you belong and your voice is important, especially young people of color as well. I think, like what Julie said, there's a place here for voices, for people who have come from different backgrounds, who experience things in different ways. Just like you have former players on a broadcast and they offer a particular point of view that's been very coveted. I think there are other voices that have been less coveted, and there need to be a bigger place at the table for those voices as well. And I do tell young women that, you're going to encounter things that are unacceptable that you have to try to accept in some way, that is just part of the business. And if you are someone who is sensitized, then it's going to be hard. It's not impossible, but it will be harder for you. But just to be aware, I think, of you enter this business, and I always tell people, you need to have kind of a reporter hat, and you do things with your reporter hat on that you wouldn't necessarily do as Jane McManus, human being in the world, right? It's a way for you to distance yourself a little bit professionally from, whatever as a front-facing person you're going to face. And I do think women in this business and people of color in this business just do get more trolling and blowback and criticism, et cetera. So I think you have to be prepared for that. But I also think, it's important to realize that in addition to that, you have real strengths. Like, you have things about the way that you're going to have conversations with people, whether it's, the school you went to, the part of the country that you're from, the music that you like, whatever it is, you're going to find ways of relating to people because of who you are and what your individual personality is, and to have that be a strength for you, and to don't be afraid of engaging in that way with people. So, I mean, I think the business is tough in some ways right now, especially if you're not somebody who comes from a family of means. You financially may be struggling, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, don't give up, because this business is in the middle of a massive change. but you put in the time now, and perhaps given the next iteration of what's to come, you will be better positioned to take advantage of it.
There's always two things that I tell young women. And the first is get comfortable asking for what you want and talking publicly about what you want and what you've accomplished. I think that, a lot of women are still sort of raised to not toot their own horns, to not be pushy, for lack of a better word. And it wasn't until I was working in radio that I noticed how the differences between men and women, and that men will walk into the program director's door and say, I want my own show and I think I deserve it and here's why. Whereas women, I think, sort of have this idea that we're just lucky to be there. And I had, when I would complain about not getting opportunities to friends at my old station, one guy would say to me, 1 million women would love to have your job. And thinking back on it now, I'm like, I noticed he didn't say 1 million men would love to have my job, though. And I think that there is sort of this idea that, oh, you're the only woman here. You're lucky to be here. This place could easily be all men. So just be happy with what you have and don't rock the boat. And I don't think that women in an industry this competitive get anywhere without constantly talking about what they've achieved and what they want. And I see men doing that all the time on social media. Far, far fewer women doing it. And the second thing is that you cannot see other women as competition. You have to see them as your allies. I think that because we are conditioned to know that there's only going to be one woman at the table, right? There might be 4 guys and 1 woman. They're never going to put 3 women and a guy on like a post-game show. So we're all competing for that one spot. We're all competing to be that one woman. Everybody wants to be the token woman who's going to be included. And it's led to, I think women, looking at each other as competition, trying to tear each other down, talking behind each other's backs, doing whatever you can to get a leg up on over the other woman. And it really does not serve any of us well, especially because at the end of the day, the other women are going to be the ones who know what you're going through. They're going to know what it's like to be the only woman who walks into a room full of men and to try to hold your own as the only women there. And we really need to be on each other's side, supporting each other, promoting each other's work, and doing everything we can, not only to push the door open for ourselves, but to hold it for the woman coming behind you. And I know, especially having been in college and in a sorority, I know the levels of competition that exist among women, but it is really something that we have got to get over, because there are just not enough of us to have the luxury to be competitive with each other. We need to be lifting while we're climbing.
That is so well said. And I'm just going to add, Julie, since you've inspired me, but I think the longer that I'm in this business, when I first got in, I thought, oh my gosh, there are going to be so many women coming after me. My first year covering sports was 1998. Or 1987, first year of the Liberty, playing in Madison Square Garden. That meant so much to me. And then, Women's World Cup and the 96, the Olympics, and the American women had won all these gold medals. And I thought, that's it. There's just going to be, I'm the crest of a wave here. And that didn't happen. And I've come to realize through the course of my career that this isn't so much about the individual women as it is about the systems and how women are hired, how they're seen, how they're viewed. We don't necessarily walk in thinking we're the token women, but certainly we're often viewed that way. And that isn't so much about us. That's about the systems in which we work. So to me, as we see so many women getting different opportunities now, like Kim Eng, and we see Sarah Fuller, and we see all of these women rising up in different professional leagues, which is incredibly gratifying to me. At the same time, I think we have to realize that what has held them back is not a lack of talented, powerful, able women. What's held them back are the systems in which they are rising. So I want to see them continue to rise. Some of them fail, right? Because that's what everybody has an opportunity to do. But again, it's an incredibly slow process. I cannot believe that I am more than halfway through my career and there are not more women just crushing the doors behind me.
And for any listeners or viewers interested in Sarah Fuller, Jane wrote a great article for Deadspin the other day. That's Sarah.
Yeah,
but nevertheless, Ladies Room, the first 2 episodes are available wherever you get your podcasts. Julie, Jane, this has been nothing short of delightful. Thank you so much for joining us.
I have to say, for a podcast with 4 guys, you guys are okay.
It was fun. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. We'll be right back here on One-on-One. Thank you again to Julie and Jane. Stick around, everyone.
A brand new YouTube channel. Subscribe to WFUV Sports to catch our simulcast Saturday nights and get notifications so you never miss another show. Miss the show? You can find on-demand segments, interviews, and highlights every week. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Sports Call-In Show. I am Michael Legan, and once again, I have the latest headlines from the world of sports. Let's move now to the Diamond, where there's a lot going on with the Mets and Yankees. And first off, on Monday, the Mets introduced Jared Porter as the 14th general manager in team history. Porter spent 8 years in the Red Sox organization starting in 2004. He spent 2 years with the Cubs, and for the past 4 seasons, he's been the assistant general manager for the Diamondbacks. Of course, all that time with the Red Sox and Cubs, he overlapped a lot with Theo Epstein, the man who is now, of course, famous for breaking some of baseball's biggest curses. So, Andrew, Dylan, your thoughts? I know all three of us are big Met fans. Well, Dylan, you're like half a Met fan because I don't understand how you're also a Yankee fan. It's the weirdest thing. But, you know, Andrew, you and me are real Met fans. What do you think about the Jared Porter move?
Hey, buddy, all right?
Look, I'm telling you right now, hey. You cannot be a Met and a Yankee fan at the same time. It is physically impossible.
What, am I going to betray half my family? Is that what you're asking me to do?
Yeah, you got to pick a side. It's you know, it's baseball. Mets and Yankees baseball is a war. You got to pick your side. All right.
Well, I have to, like, what am I, the queen? I have to betray half my family?
It's not betrayal. You're choosing your sides. I mean, I have family members that are Yankee fans. I don't root for the Yankees. I hate the Yankees.
Hey, look, buddy, you're on thin ice. I'll cut you off at any time. I'm the Yankee.
I mean, look, it's a Saturday. It's a nice day out. I mean, you want to cut me off? All right, I'll go sit outside. I'm
gonna give my opinion first because I'm as much a Mets fan as anybody else.
Okay, go ahead.
I can't believe you had the audacity to bring that up.
I'll say it again. You're not. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I like Jared Porter a lot. I did not know much about him before the Mets hired him, but from everything I heard a lot of people say that he speaks many languages of baseball, which is a really and things along those lines, which is a really enticing thing to hear, because obviously that means he can communicate with a bunch of different people, and that's exactly what you want in a general manager. Because in the front office field, in that universe, they are the face of the team, so that's incredible. And also, Theo Epstein, any baseball fan who I think knows their stuff is a fan of his, but also Red Sox and then the Cubs. That's a really good track record, man. And obviously I trust Sandy Alderson, and I know Steve Cohen is staying out of it, as he's promised to do. So I like this hire a lot.
I mean, I agree, but the first thing I have to say, I mean, Dylan, it would be much worse if you were like a half Phillies fan or half Nationals fan. Like, I mean, to me, yeah, I think the rivalry with the Yankees, I think everyone, just because crosstown rivals, obviously, but I hate the Phillies and the Nationals much worse than I hate the Yankees. And that's
look, I'm going to say this real quick. This town, New York, is a baseball town going back all the way to the turn of the century, each borough has its team. There was no Giant fans and Yankee fans. There's no Dodger. My grandfather, if he is one of the, well, obviously he was a diehard Dodgers fan. He's a diehard Met fan. There's no sharing. We're losing track here. Andrew, give me your take on Porter.
I love Jared Porter, as I think a lot of people do. I just love how he's just, I mean, he's a baseball mind, and it's honestly just a breath of fresh air to not have a agent run your franchise. So that's kind of, I think, the biggest thing, which again, I feel like, again, nothing completely against Brody Van Wagenen. He's a good agent, but just didn't work out as a GM. And he's a baseball guy, baseball lifer, a World Series champion, which is just a nice breath of fresh air. And it's nice to see what Sandy Alderson can do when he's not strapped and with one hand tied behind his back. And again, hopefully this is now the Mets can get now Porter mentored, and everything could kind of seamlessly go into place, and it could be now starting to be a nice run franchise.
Yeah, I would just say, well, first off, I think this is a great hire. My biggest thing, obviously, that excites me as a Met fan is the connection with Theo Epstein. Now, obviously, we know in the past, just because you work for somebody doesn't mean that, you are that person. Case in point, all the assistant coaches that work for Sean McVay, they got head coaching jobs that are not, amazing. So I'll just say this when it comes to, to Jared Porter. There's an interesting thing going on here with the Mets, where in that it seems to me, and I think Sandy has kind of said this publicly, is like there's a transition going on. Sandy was kind of brought in to kind of, not so much that Steve didn't want him, but it appeases the owners. It's when there was the whole process going of approval of ownership, it's Steve was signifying, hey, I want to run this organization properly. I'm going to bring in a baseball lifer who's going to help me do that. And Sandy has even said it. I heard in an interview earlier this week that when he was initially hired, he did not think he'd be taking as big a part in the baseball operations. And I guess just because of the time the sale was finalized and free agency, that he ended up taking more of a big role. So it seems to me that now that they got Jared Porter, it's going to be a slow transition from Sandy. Sandy's, he's later stages of his life. He's obviously battled cancer, and great on him. He's healthy now, and that's all wonderful. But it seems to me that he's going to slowly transition. I think he's grooming Jared, and I think Jared's already got the resume. And now it's Sandy there, who, has so much experience. I think the Mets are really setting up a long-term success plan, which I think is really important for a franchise that has struggled to maintain success. I don't want, we were talking about this in the break a little bit. I am sick and tired of a Mets fan of okay, we made the World Series this year, or we made the playoffs, we made all the way to the NLCS. Okay, we're good for 15 years. We don't have to make the playoffs again. That's not what teams should do. We need to be a consistent winner. I want to be the Dodgers of the East Coast. I don't want to have as many heartbreaking losses, but, so I like this move a lot.
Yeah, I think to what you were just saying is, what I didn't realize until it happened, when in 2016, when the Mets went to the wild card game, that was the first time in franchise history that they had back-to-back playoff appearances. That's crazy.
Second time.
Second time?
They did it in 99 and 2000.
2000.
That's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That checks out.
Yeah. They lost the NLCS to the Braves, and they lost the World Series to the Yankees.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh, you just completely threw me off my train of thought.
All right. Well, hey, look, this is what happens when you're not a real Met. This is what happens when you're not a real Met fan. You don't know the history of the team.
You have thrown this segment completely off the rails. To those listening and to those watching on 90.7 FM, FUV.org, FUVsports.org, Facebook, YouTube, I apologize for his behavior, okay? I will talk to him in the break. But anyways, of course Sandy had a little more of a say in this than he usually would. It's the natural progression of how things were going to happen. But I think Sandy knows and Steve Cohen knows that when the time comes, Jared Porter's going to have the final say on things, and him only. So that is going to that's something Mets fans, I guess, aren't really used to. We're used to there being tension between the ownership and the front office. We saw with Brody Van Wagenen.
Sandy's a perfect example. I mean, he even talked about it after he got fired, that he was, or whatever, let go, whatever happened there in that situation. But it was ownership was saying one thing. He said, you only could spend this much. I mean, everyone goes back to the tweet where it was he said he only can drive downhill because the Wilpons don't pay for a certain amount of mileage. So, I mean, these are the type of situations. And it's not having that. And I think Sandy, I think he's a great baseball mind. And if you give him the money, and now with Porter, I feel like it's going the right direction, which is great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, the one last thing that I would say also is that, I love that Jared is lock and step with Steve Cohen and with the winning mentality. And actually in his press conference this week, one of the reporters asked him, they said, what do you, because remember that there was that statement that came out which Steve said, if I don't win a championship in 3 to 5 years, it's a disappointment. And some people were saying, Andy Martino, which I don't want to get into him, but he was saying, reporting, hey, this is driving off people from wanting the job. And Steve rightfully replied, if they don't want the job because of that mandate, we don't want them here. So Porter, when he was asked about that, and I'll read the quote for you guys real quick, he said, quote, "It really does excite me. It shows a strong commitment from ownership who wants to win, who wants to put a winner on the field of the fan base for the fan base of New York. And I'm completely aligned with that. It excites me. I want those expectations." And that is exactly, in my opinion, what you want to hear from a general manager. He wants to win, and there's only more you can ask. All right, guys. So let's move on to our next headline here with the Mets. Earlier this week, it was reported by MLB Network's John Morosi that the Rockies would like to engage in trade talks with the Mets regarding star third baseman Nolan Arenado. He is owed $35 million in 2021, and if he doesn't exercise his opt-out clause after next season, he's going to be owed $164 million through 2026. Now, obviously, we know a lot of teams, the Mets are lucky in the fact they got a new owner because a lot of teams are strapped for cash. What do you guys think about this reported desire for the Rockies to engage with the Mets? Do you think Arenado fits the Mets? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, let's put this issue to bed right now, okay? Yes, I come from a Mets family and Yankees family. I'm a product of both. But if I have to pick a team, it is the Mets. I said it. And I've put this to bed.
What is that in Romeo and Juliet? It's like the Capulets and the what are those other family that Montagues? That's what this is like. The families don't mix. All right, it's just not going to work out. But go ahead, though. We're gonna cut you some slack. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you've turned my whole sports fandom into Shakespearean literature,
That's what I do. I got to bring the references.
That's absurd. That's completely absurd. But I love it. Anyways. I think if the Mets can pull off this trade shrewdly and not too far into excess, then I'm for it. But I think part of what was great about having Steve Cohen in the picture is that there's money to be spent. So if I'm the Mets, if you can't get a blockbuster steal of a deal to get Nolan Arenado, I just focus on the free agent market, at least for this year. I've said this on the show a couple times before, but to me, all Steve Cohen has to do this offseason is make one big free agent acquisition to show me and show all Mets fans that he is serious when he says 3 to 5 years. That's all he has to do. More, great. But from my perspective, I think, if you can get a really great deal on Nolan Arenado and you don't have to sacrifice too much, that's fantastic. But you got a good core of guys that can win very soon. Why not just sign somebody? You got the money.
Yeah, and I think Sandy Alderson said that. I mean, he's like, I'd rather sign people than trade because, look, our farm system's depleted from Brody and all the mess that was there. We have a lot of money. So let's go out and sign people. And that's why I wouldn't go out and get Arenado. The one thing I do want to say, I was like, when was the time where teams would go to the Mets to try to trade them their stars?
Never.
I mean, that's something that to me, that got me excited. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want Arenado just because that opt-out clause scares me. Because, like, let's say you give up a lot for him and then he opts out and supposedly he really wants to go to like the Dodgers. So that would really stink to have him really only get him 1 year. That's why I like a guy like Lindor more, because you're hoping that you can trade for him and then sign him. And then he's your franchise guy for a long time. That's kind of the route I would go. But I think free agent first. And just because I'd rather give a guy money than giving up probably money and then also prospects on top of it. So that's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I would just say this is where it comes to me with Aaron. I think if we're debating a Francisco Lindor versus Nolan Arenado trade, I think Arenado fits the Mets better. They have a needed third base. You won't have to, unless he was in the trade, which I really hope he's not, you wouldn't have to move Jimenez from short. I love Jimenez. I think that guy is a stud defensively. He's got some potential in that bat. I really enjoyed watching him last season. It was only 60 games, so who knows? But I think Arenado fits the Mets better, but I think Lindor is the better player. And also when you get Lindor, there's not a fear of is he going to translate? We're not at Coors Field anymore, and I don't have the slashes in front of me, but I know off the top of my head that, maybe the home run numbers are okay, but the average definitely for Arenado drops after leaving Coors Field, and that's a concern for me. I know DJ LeMahieu, but you look at his career with the Rockies, he always had a nice home road split. Arenado, I don't see that as much, and I understand my power out of third base, but I'm sorry, I'm sick and tired of getting the Todd Fraziers of the world who hit 212, but maybe they'll get a few home runs. I want a guy that can consistently hit. So I'm honestly more inclined to get Lindor. I know that it's going to contribute more to the problem the Mets have of playing guys who are not defensively the strongest, because you'd put Lindor at short, and then I really want to keep Jimenez. So assuming you kept him, you'd have to move him to third, or you'd have to put him at second and put McNeil at third, and we know he's not the strongest there. But I think either way, if you're trading for either guy, I'm not going to complain. First of all, they're both great talents. I just like Lindor a little more. But the other thing is, the Mets have this asset of they have cash, and Steve Cohen, unlike the other owners, wasn't impacted by this no fans this season, revenue down, because he wasn't in the league. Now he is. He's bringing his private money in, so he is the best. Yeah, exactly. 14 billion, whatever it is. He's bringing that beautiful money. He's like the Monopoly guy. He's got those money bags, but he's the bank is what I would call him. These teams need cash. They're going to go for him. So if I'm on a team, the Mets have all the leverage. Why would we give up these prospects for saying, hey, you don't want to pay this guy. You don't have the money. So you're going to unload him somewhere. We're the ones that can take this contract off your hands. So yeah, we'll give you JD Davis, but we're not giving up, Brett Beatty. We're not giving up our top prospects in order to get this guy. And I really hope that the Mets, they can execute one of these trades, but they remember, hey, we still got the leverage here. All right, guys. And so our last headline, real quick, we'll squeeze it in here with the Yankees. So late last week, it was reported the Yankees and DJ LeMahieu, we just talked about him, were more than $25 million apart in the contract negotiations. And this week, things continue to get worse. It was reported Thursday that DJ has engaged in talks with the Blue Jays. And then Brian Cashman even said publicly this week that he understands there's a risk in playing this waiting game that the two sides are doing. So, guys, Dylan, you're the Yankee fan. Are you a little concerned about what's going on here with DJ?
Well, we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I'll use this comparison again that I used with you guys, that this kind of emotionally distant level that the Yankees are playing right now with DJ LeMahieu is very Mets-like, or the Mets we have seen. Hopefully not the Mets anymore. But that's the kind of thing that we as Mets fans are used to seeing. There's not as much hullabaloo over the fact that this guy might leave. And, after the season and a half, if you will, that DJ LeMahieu has put up as a Yankee, he's worth the money that he wants. The reports that he wants around $100 million, right? And we talked about this before the show. Mm-hmm. In baseball proportions, DJ LeMahieu has certainly proven himself worth $100 million. So I don't see what the holdup is here for the Yankees. Maybe still a Jacobian holdback, and of course by that I mean contracts like Jacoby Ellsbury's. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I don't understand why the Yankees are playing this waiting game here. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, why are the Yankees suddenly acting like the Wilpons? I think that's the main thing. I mean, because this is a very similar situation to the Cespedes one with the Mets. The Mets needed Cespedes to win, and I know the contract ended up not really working out, especially. But let's go back to after the 2015 season, and it just was waiting, and the Mets needed him. And I feel like this is similar because the Yankees need DJ LeMahieu, and I feel like he's worth $100 million. And if he ever listens to some other offers, maybe it's from the Mets, maybe it's from some other team, I feel like another team would be willing to give him $100 million. And if he leaves the Yankees, I think you can kiss winning a World Series for this year goodbye. Because I think you need in that lineup, you have so many, home run hitters, boom or bust hitters, especially in the playoffs. You need a contact hitter who can get the runner home. And if they don't have him or a player like him, I know like Lindor, he's kind of in rumors with the Yankees as well. Again, that would really hurt to not have that contact hitter in the middle of the lineup that could drive runners in, especially in big situations in the playoffs. And I just don't understand the Yankees give everyone, big contracts that they feel is right. They just gave a huge one to Garrett Cole. I mean, just to me, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I would say with DJ, I mean, first off, this guy was in his 2 years with the Yankees has almost been an MVP candidate each year. I mean, he's
Exactly.
just always, puts that amazing play out on the field. The Yankees, look, I understand. Look, we always think of the Yankees as the evil empire, have all this money. Like a lot of teams, they were hurt by the season this year. No fans, 60 games, down revenue money wise. So I'm sure that plays a part in it. It seemed like a lot of players. I think it was Luke Voigt came out and said he's pretty confident that they're going to get him. I think Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone have said somewhat cautiously, like we feel somewhat confident about it. So I think more than likely he does end up back with the Yankees. But they really, I mean, I understand it's a slow market and they're playing to that market, but I wouldn't really mess around because they need DJ. And if I'm the Mets, look, I understand the Blue Jays are interested, which I think would hurt the Yankees more, same division and all that stuff. But can you imagine being a Yankee fan and losing who honestly it may be their best player to the team that, just a few years ago was signing the likes of Marlon Byrd and, James Loney to play positions on this team? I mean, it would kill the Yankee fan. So selfishly as a Met fan, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. We got the money. Let's get him. Honestly, I feel like he might work out for the Mets too because he can play third base. But I don't know. The other thing about it with the Yankees, I know we got to head to break real quick, is do you maybe consider trading Luke Voigt in a package for Francisco Lindor and moving DJ to first base full time if you can get it back? That's just something to think about.
That's not a bad thought. And I had forgotten about Marlon Byrd. So thank you for reminding me.
I was trying to think about some of the most random Mets off the top of my head. I could find more, but that
was wonderful. This has been quite the segment. We covered more ground than we probably should have. But it is 1 a.m. Saturday Night Live is just saying their goodnights now. But guess what? We have a whole other hour in store for you. Coming up in just a second, we have another edition of Off the Air, and we have WFUV Sports alum Mike Nastry, who's currently working at CBS Sports and has for quite a little bit. So we're going to take a break for a couple minutes, but that'll be waiting for you when you get back. So stick around here on One on One.
Be sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
Welcome in, everybody. This is episode 20 of Off the Air. I am Andrew Posadas, pleased to be joined alongside Alexander Walls for this episode. And I am pleased to join in an associate producer, associate director right now at CBS Sports Network, was at Fordham University from 2005 to 2009, and spent a whole lot of time at WFUV, Mike Nastry. Mike, welcome into Off the Air.
Hey guys, glad to be here. Really happy to be joining you and excited to speak with you guys.
So Mike, let's just get started with you growing up when did you first get that bug or that inclination that you wanted to do something in the sports media industry growing up?
I had the fortune of my dad being in the industry. He was an audio engineer for sports and entertainment. When you take your son to work day would be a little different than going to an office like most people growing up. And I definitely had the opportunity to be in the trucks, in the production rooms, and in the control rooms, and getting an idea of what it was like to be in a live TV atmosphere. And actually heading into Fordham, I wasn't quite sure that that's what I wanted to do, but then being at FUV and the love and passion that I have for sports, and then the love and passion that I found with radio and TV production while at Fordham, it was an easy career choice for me leaving Fordham in 2009.
So you talk about having that interest in production from being really young. You get your first days at Fordham. When you first come into FUV, first come into the station, what were those first days like for you?
It's definitely a strange experience because it's not like it's a bunch of students. Obviously the station as a whole is a full-time or mostly full-time music station. And at the time when we were there was a small sports department and a small news department. And then the Kale and the Gale guys, which actually was my freshman roommate, was the host for junior and senior year. And that was kind of the extent of the student participation at the station. And, you just didn't, you walk in and you meet Bob for the first time in the back office. And it was definitely an interesting experience, but you immediately felt welcome. Everybody at the station is incredibly friendly and helpful, and wanted to see the students that were working at the station succeed. With that, on that softer note, I heard about the passing of Rita Houston today, and it was unfortunate. Like, she was one of the people that just had such an infectious energy in the office, and the few times that our paths crossed at the station were memories that I'll never forget, just because of what a wonderful, expressive individualist that she was. And the station and the music community is going to be sorely missing her.
Yeah, our condolences go out to Rita's family and her friends. It's definitely a tragic news hearing that out of FUV. But Mike, for yourself personally, do you remember the point where you decided that you wanted to go into production more so than be on air?
I mean, that really, I think, happened after college. I did a little bit of both while I was at FUV. And I think it's really important to be able to get both sides, because being an on-air talent at FUV at times, whether it was doing color for basketball or soccer, or being one of the hosts for one-on-one, and having the producer talk to you then, and knowing, okay, well, that wasn't a great time to be talking to me because I'm not as smooth on air as maybe like a Ryan Rucco or a Justin Shackle, that can kind of just roll with the punches. And it helped me kind of get into that mold, knowing what on-air talent needs, and it helped me become a better producer later on. So having that experience set me up for, again, success down the road. After college, at senior year, I actually did put some demo reels together, and it was the only job bites were coming from, Fargo, North Dakota, or, something like that, where I would even get a response from people. And it dawned on me that I would have to be leaving really my circle of friends and family in the New York area to continue down that path. And I think at the time I saw that I had some potential with some of the pieces that I worked on at FUV to be able to do some longer form features and production in that sense. And it got me going in a production field. My senior year at Fordham, I worked at the station and did some on-air stuff, but a majority of my time was spent as a production assistant at MSG while I was still in school. And that got me started on a path there, working for their high school sports network, MSG Varsity, when it first launched for a couple years, before then coming to CBS Sports and CBS Sports Network in 2011. And I've been there ever since.
An interesting point that you brought up there was about the importance of being in New York. You talked about how you didn't want to take a job that would bring you to a kind of a different place. Why has that been so important to you? Kind of working with MSG as one example, now with CBS Sports Network, and kind of being at Fordham as a student, but now also, working with CBS. Why has it been so important to stay here in New York?
I mean, I think for me, it was just being around friends and family and not wanting to miss those opportunities. We had a lot of on-air talent that had varying degrees of success come and visit us from their experience at FUV. And for me, I didn't want to get stuck in a place that I was going to maybe be unhappy being for a while. And not to say, and to be honest with you, I've been to Fargo, North Dakota a few times now covering college hockey. And it's a wonderful town. It's a great place. So at the time, maybe it was a little immaturity or, for lack of a better term, FOMO, fear of missing out with family and friends. But I'm very happy with the decision that I made to stick with production. I think it was a field that I was going to excel more in than being on air.
So just following up on that, Mike, is there any broadcast that you've done, any game that you've reported on, whatever the case, any one-on-one interview or show? Is there any highlights in your time at FUV that you kind of think stands out more?
I mean, there's a lot of highlights that I can remember. The first was, when I joined the station as a sophomore, I actually started out as a Tulane student that moved in during Hurricane Katrina and then ended up at Fordham, which was a school that I really wanted to go to, but just didn't get as much scholarship money to go there as I did to Fordham. Ended up going to Fordham for the semester, and I loved it so much I stayed. And then after I kind of had felt settled at Fordham, that's when I got involved with the station. And I remember the first year I was doing women's broadcast as the producer on, and then I was one of the hosts for the Kathy Andruzzi show, who was the coach at the time. And that started getting me thinking about what other sports we could be doing on the internet, because those at the time were only on WFUV.org. And I've been a soccer fan since I was 5 years old. I started still play at a very recreational level now, but I found another guy with Brian Clark that was a huge soccer fan. And we went to the head coach of the Fordham team at the time, Jim McElderry, and with Bob and pitched, hey, can we do some of these games, at least home games, on WFUV.org? Soccer is not something that's on the radio a ton. And it took us a while. We did almost a month of the season at home games, kind of prepping, practicing. And I remember the first time that we did a game, we actually went to Columbia, which was a Fordham away game. I think it was like a mini tournament. And we did one or two games from the press box at the Columbia football field. And just seeing something that you created with someone else, and then it was rough. I can guarantee you it was a rough broadcast. I was the analyst, and I was far from a finished product, and Brian was just starting his play-by-play duties. And we were doing a sport that we didn't have a lot of training in covering other than knowing the sport. But it was a great experience. And, I think it kind of opened up other people in the station trying to broadcast sports that they were really interested in covering throughout the years. We would always do a little softball or a little baseball, but I think it opened up to, I think at one time there was some water polo, some volleyball, FUV.org radio broadcasts that went out. And I think it just opened up a lot of ideas to people that were working at the station that were a little younger than us, to how we can utilize the internet to continue the WFUV sports brand. And then the second is probably the thing that I'm most proud of at FUV was the two-part interview I did with Faye Vincent, the former commissioner of baseball. It was an hour-and-a-half interview that Faye and I did from Bob's office, actually, because it was the only tie line that was available when Faye can do it. And Bob was sitting there. I'd mute myself, and he would, Michael, ask him something, ask him this, and that's not the way, follow up with this, Michael. And, of course, it made the interview better, like everything, as I alluded to earlier with Bob. But, that interview was something that I'll never forget. We covered topics that I never thought that a college student could get out of someone like the former commissioner of baseball. We talked a long time about the steroid era, which was one of the most important stories my junior and senior year with the Mitchell report coming out. I was actually at the Mitchell Report release. I have somewhere one of the original Mitchell reports in my baseball card memorabilia, I think. And it was just electric being at one of the biggest sporting stories and at the center of it, and then talking to someone that had such an innate knowledge to how it worked and what they should have done and what they didn't do. You know, he expressed a lot of regret to how he should have pushed the envelope with Bud a little bit and Bud Selig a little bit more at the beginning of the steroid era in baseball. And it was one of the most memorable moments of my career still to this day. And it happened during my senior year at FUV.
That's fantastic. And I want to say too, on the soccer note, I know Andrew and I are both soccer fans ourselves, so we can't thank you enough for getting that started at FUV.
Yes.
It's sticking with that today. So that definitely appreciate that.
Mike, the current pandemic has really drastically changed how sports networks are going about their broadcasts. We're seeing a lot of things done remotely. Announcers are at home, in their basements doing games, calling it off of a monitor. For yourself as a producer and a director, what has been some of the biggest transitions, some of the biggest challenges that you have faced this year, but with the pandemic really starting back in March?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's affected production in a really profound way that it's going to be interesting to see, what we do moving forward. I was traveling a lot for games in the past, going out, whether I was the AD on the game, which is associate director, I was doing the edit for the game, whether I was cutting a big tease for certain games, or, rolling the commercials, working with tape on tape packages, to directing, which is, calling the camera shots and the overall aesthetic look of the broadcast. I was always kind of out on the road traveling a lot. Obviously travel has slowed down, and, I've been very thankful to work for a company that's taken our safety and put it, in the forefront, and, has taken social distancing and testing, and all of that stuff is very, very important to people that are starting families, and makes you feel like it's a corporation that really cares about you. The lack of travel has really been the biggest thing for me. We've been doing some games out of control rooms that are a little different than how we would normally do a game, but we've all adjusted well. And I think the name of the game is being as flexible as possible. And I think, you have to be flexible in an ever-changing world. And it's something that, again, being at FUV kind of taught me, with all the different things that I had my hands in when I was at the station, to be able to manage and juggle a lot of things at once, but also be able to know that things aren't always going to go your way, and to roll with the punches and be flexible. And that flexibility and adaptability is something that is an incredible skill to have in any business that you go in moving forward.
And something that you mentioned too was a little bit about what the future might look like. And I think that's something that we're all kind of interested in now, as production's kind of gone remote broadcasting and doing things, like you said, from home or in control rooms that look a little different. What have you, in these past few months, what have you kind of taken away that you think might stick with that kind of future of sports from a production standpoint? The short answer is I don't know. I think every media company, every production is going to take different things that they liked and didn't like from kind of being forced to adapt in this way. And I think moving forward, I think everyone's going to take a little bit of what they liked and a little bit of what they didn't like and instill it, I don't want to be one to kind of project what a company as a whole is going to do, yeah. But one thing for me that I have found to be incredibly nice is being able to edit from home. I think there's certain times that you're editing a piece that you really want to be next to your editor and having a consistent conversation with them. But the Zooms and the Google Meets and the video services now, where you can share a screen and have a second screen where you're looking at the person, it's not quite the same, but it certainly for certain things can make it work. And I think it gives you some flexibility, is if your schedule's crazy or you're traveling to multiple games in a row, and maybe on
you have to edit something really quickly. It's a tool that you can use moving forward. Maybe not the norm, but certainly something that people are now all used to, and you can access to help you and complement the regular workflows that you had before.
Mike, one last question for you before we conclude this episode. What piece of advice, or what's the biggest piece of advice that you have for those of us who are working at FUV now, some of us who are just breaking into FUV at Fordham, and those incoming freshmen who are coming into Fordham and may be interested in working at FUV?
I think it's three things. I think it's embrace every opportunity that you can get at FUV, whether it's producing a women's basketball game and running the board, or being the host of one-on-one for a week. All of the experiences there are professional, a professional atmosphere that you're not going to get maybe even at an internship level, because you're not going to get the opportunity to do those jobs. You can walk in and dip your toe in a bunch of different fields and figure out what you like and what you want to concentrate on. With that too, because of the opportunities that you have at FUV to set up for an internship, intern at a bunch of different places in a bunch of different fields, intern in production, intern in programming, intern in operations. And you might find that you really like maybe not having to do with the creative part of the broadcast, but you might like being one of the people that down the road is selecting the programming that you're putting on the network. Maybe you decide that you don't like the television space at all and you want to do more podcasts. You know, there's so many different media jobs out there now, that way more than there were when I was applying to jobs out of school, that I think being able to have a understanding of a bunch of different skill sets and from both FUV and internships are going to be great. And I would say that for everyone that's at FUV, it's never going to hurt to embrace video. You know, I think the younger generations are definitely doing that across the board just from their personal device. But now more than ever, you can be so creative with technology. You know, when I was in school, our smartphones were flip phones, you know? So when you were trying to take video of someone, it was not a broadcast quality, but you could go and shoot something on your iPhone on campus and have it look great. So I think just being creative with the tools that technology have given us to play around and, you know, just kind of do stuff on your own and see what you're capable of is incredibly important, because it'll help you gain confidence, but it will also help you gain a knowledge base that'll be incredibly helpful if you want to go in any type of media career moving forward.
Couldn't agree more with that.
Yes, and on that note, he is an associate producer, associate director at CBS Sports Network. More importantly, he is an FUV sports alum. He is Michael Nastri. Mike, appreciate you taking some time to join us here on Off the Air.
Of course, guys. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it, and good luck with the rest of your careers at Fordham.
Check out all of our latest podcasts on WFUVsports.org or wherever you get your shows, including NFL Friday, Nosebleeds, Pick and Pod, 5 on 3, College Gridiron, and FUV FC. Also, our newest edition, Off the Air, diving into the station's legacy with its most prominent alumni. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
is almost 1:30 in the morning, and we are live on 90.7, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you can find us. And just like we do every week during the NFL season, we are going to be doing a Who You Got segment. We're going to run down a list of this week's top matchups. We're going to say who we like, who we don't like, maybe make some predictions, scores, player performances, whatever goes along with these games. So let's get it started right now. We're going to start off with a Saturday game. New England and Miami. Well, actually, we would know by now actually what the score is. So let's go on to the next one. Kansas City and New Orleans. That's what we're going to make a prediction for right now. And Dylan, let's start off with you. Who do you like?
Well, first off, let me say, I'm going to say it. We'll see if it comes true. I'm picking Miami to beat New England. I don't think it's a really hot take, but it's who I think. In terms of Kansas City, New Orleans, we've talked about the Saints quite a bit already in this show, and we'll continue to. And maybe this is a hot take, but I'm going to take New Orleans in this one. I think, like we talked about their momentum a lot earlier in the show, and I think that's going to play a big factor in this game. As good as the Chiefs are, I think Drew Brees returning to the field for the Saints is going to be a catalyst for them. And I think it propels them through this game. So I'm going to take the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'm going to go with KC because I don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I know I'm the Saints fan, and it pains me to say that. I think Patrick Mahomes, and I was saying this earlier in the week, there's only one quarterback in my time of watching the NFL where every pass he throws, I'm scared out of my mind that he's going to throw a touchdown. And that's also partly to do with because Tyreek Hill is just a burner on the outside and he's going to get open deep. But I mean, I wanted to start off with that because I feel like the Saints could win this game. And I feel like it's going to be very, very close because I feel like with Drew Brees back, the Saints are really good in time of possession. And that's going to be huge because every game that either KC is close in or they lose in, it's because they get crushed in time of possession. Makes sense. Patrick Mahomes on the sideline and he's not able to make those big plays. And that's why I'm expecting a big game from Alvin Kamara as well. I feel like with Brees back, right now the Chiefs linebacking core isn't as good. They're missing one. And to me, it's going to be very close. And what's going to be imperative though is that the Chiefs looking like they're going to miss one of their offensive tackles, which could be huge to getting to Patrick Mahomes. But I just don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I'm not in that business. So that's why I'll take the Chiefs.
All right, so for me, I'm going to go with Kansas City here. Also, Drew Brees is his first game back. Just only missing 4 games when he got a punctured lung and multiple broken ribs. I don't know how healthy he is. They said they were going to wait until he was fully healthy, but
I guarantee you he's healthy. He's okay. Crazy when it comes to that. He's going to get himself back on the field, and I just think he's that type of quarterback, and I feel like...
Well, I think he wants to play. The question is, everyone wants to play. I mean, we'll see what happens. But even if he is fully healthy, it's a question of can he get back into rhythm with the offense? They've been without him. They've been getting used to the Taysom Hill style. And like you said with Kansas City, Andrew, every time that offense steps on the field, every play I'm expecting some 50-yard bomb, some huge run after the catch by Tyreek Hill, a huge play by Travis Kelce, something big to happen. Patrick Mahomes rolls out and throws a no-look pass to somebody. I don't know. I love Kansas City. I still think they're the favorites in the AFC. I think the Steelers have kind of proven themselves to be a fugazi team. I don't really trust them. So, in this game, just because I don't know if Drew is going to be fully ready yet, despite what Andrew, our Saints fan, tells me, I don't know. And I think Kansas City's too good. I like them too much in this game. New Orleans is a dome team. Let me tell you, this Kansas City offense will benefit by playing in a dome because that environment is not the same without all those fans there. All right, so next up,
I will say, not to interrupt you, Mike, but also worth noting about Drew Brees is that, we talked a lot earlier in the show that he's not the quarterback he used to be. He is older than he used to be. One might say we're all older than we used to be. But to move away from Descartes for 1 second, I think that's worth, and excuse me for my dog, but I think it's also worth noting that, his recovery is also going to be set back by the fact that he is older. And, if Andrew is right, that he'll recover quickly, then
he's
maybe
crazy.
I'm right with my prediction of picking them to win.
I've seen him do some crazy. Last year, they said he was going to be out for at least 6 weeks. He comes back in 5 weeks. I mean, the whole injury with the whole shoulder coming back from that. I mean, that's just. I mean, with his whole a lot of people didn't think he'd be able to come back, and he ends up having his best years because of it. he's just a guy that, especially when bouncing back in times of adversity, I won't bet against. And I feel like he's going to have a good week. I think it'll be a high scoring game. And then just like, once you get into that high scoring game, am I going to bet against Patrick Mahomes? No, that's just kind of my philosophy.
All right, so our next matchup, first off, I do apologize. This is the problems of doing pre-recorded shows. New England and Miami is a Sunday game, so we will be talking about that game. I apologize. It is not a Saturday game, so my bad. I mean, look, the two teams I hate, so I don't really care that much. But all right, let's just get into this one real quick. New England, Miami. Andrew, who you got?
I'll take Miami in this one. I think they'll get the win. I mean, their defense are going to force a few turnovers on Cam, and I feel like 2 on that offense does enough to win. It'll probably be a defensive game, hard-fought game, but I like how Miami's playing, and they get a ton of turnovers, and that's winning football, so I think they get the win.
Legan, what does the show being pre-recorded have to do with
I don't know. I was just trying to come up with an excuse. I could have sworn that was one of the Saturday games. I apologize. It's not one of the Saturday games.
It's cool. I know I already said that I'm taking Miami, but I'll just say, I don't think the Patriots are a bad team. I think the Jets are really the only bad team in that division right now. But I like Miami a lot. I don't know how they're going to fare as a playoff squad, but they've been pretty good this year.
They made that leap. I mean, they're going from like a rebuilding team. Now it's like, okay, we made the playoffs. Now hopefully next year, let's win a playoff game. I think that's a perfect transition.
Absolutely. They're on that steady incline. They're like, I would say they're kind of a year or so behind the Bills, which is why the Bills are in first place right now. But yeah, I'm taking Miami. They're the better team.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little bit of reverse psychology. So usually when I do picks, they end up being really bad. I remember all the way back in week 1, I picked the Jets to beat Buffalo, and it was an atrocity. I couldn't go back and tell you all my picks. I've had some good days and bad, but I'm going to try to do a little reverse psychology here. So I need New England to win this game, because let me tell you why, my little conspiracy theory. All right, if the Patriots get to the final game of the season against the Jets and they have nothing to play for, they will tank the game so the Jets win the game so they don't get the number 1 overall pick. And Bill Belichick will once again stick it to the Jets, and our franchise will once again be snake bitten by the Patriots. So I am going to pick Miami with the inclination that by picking them, New England will actually win the game. So I am picking Miami because of this convoluted train of thought, just so that my team can end up with the number 1 pick. I hope this makes sense. But yeah, I'm taking Miami in this game because I'm partially insane. That's why I'm taking this team. All right, now let's move on to the next pick 'em. This one we can use real logic for, and I can not worry about being superstitious. Seattle heading to our nation's capital to take on the Washington football team. Can they please pick a real name? But that's another thing to deal with later. All right, Dylan, who you like?
Well, first off, I'm cool with them being called football team for as long as possible, because to me, that's the funniest thing in the entire world. It will never not be funny to me that they're called football team.
The football team, I think.
Yeah, excuse me. The Ohio State, the football team. But anyways, so you were just talking about reverse psychology in making your pick in New England, Miami. I must say that whenever I do pick them, whether it's on this show, whether it's the NFL Friday podcast or anywhere, I always make one pick that is unreasonably ridiculous, because that's just the nature of how football works any given Sunday or Saturday or whatever, or whenever you play. So I'm going to take Washington in this game. I have further reasons as to, like, I have a prediction of exactly how the NFC East is going to turn out this year. But we're going to talk about the Giants in a little bit, so I'll save it for then. But also I think Washington has had a fairly good couple of weeks, and I don't think Seattle's a bad team. I just think maybe this is the week. So I'm going to take the football team.
Dylan, I will say that there's always an upset in the NFL, and it's just you got to pinpoint them. I mean, you're not crazy by picking Washington, but I'm going to go with Seattle. I'll let Russ cook in this one. I mean, to me, what really hurts, I think Alex Smith's injury hurts, but I think also Antonio Gibson being out may even hurt them more, because they really rely on that running game to, play that physical brand of football and, get the wins. I'm going to go with Seattle. I think it'll be closer than people expected, though. People probably think, oh, Russ will throw for a ton of yards, they'll score a ton of points, and Haskins won't be able to kind of be with them and play with them. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll be close, but I'll take Russ in the end.
So I'm actually going to go with Washington here for a few reasons. Number one, Washington's defense is great and Seattle's defense is terrible, and that makes a big difference in the NFL. Now the question is Seattle's defense bad enough? We talked about this earlier in the show that Dwayne Haskins can overcome. They don't have a whole lot of weapons. It's a little dicey, but the thing is, first off, I love the pass rush from Washington. You got Chase Young there now. You got Montez Sweat. They get to the quarterback. Okay. So I know Russ is elusive, but I don't know. It's just something in my gut. Sometimes you just got to go with your gut. And Seattle, if you notice, they have been a very up and down team this year, at least recently. They've somewhat disappointed in some of the bigger games, I want to say. There's something about this team.
They're not a complete football team.
They're definitely not a
complete
football team.
I mean, and Washington, complete football teams, beat the non-complete football teams, and that's what's happening.
And Washington has that momentum right now. They're coming off that pretty decent win against Arizona. I liked them in this game, and also think about Seattle. They basically had a bye week last week against the Jets. Putting up 30, winning by 37 points. They cruised to that win. So I could see them maybe napping a little bit, saying, "Oh, we didn't know worry about them. Hey, we just crushed this team." Well, you played the Jets, so that was a misnomer. So I really got to go with Washington in this one. Just a gut feeling. I like their defense, and Seattle's very up and down. All right, so our next matchup, a matchup of the NFC North. We got the Chicago Bears taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Andrew, who you got?
I think it'll be close division matchup. NFC North, tough nose, but I mean, I'm going to go with Minnesota. I feel like Dalvin Cook is going to have a big day. I hope he has a big day. He's on my fantasy team in the playoffs. So, hopefully he goes out, has a big day. I feel like Chicago, they've usually been really good in the run, but this year not as good, still good, but not great. So I feel like Dalvin Cook will take advantage and they'll be able to get this win.
Yeah, I feel like Chicago's been on a downward trend the last couple of weeks in particular. On the Minnesota side, we talked about Jefferson earlier in the show.
Yeah.
I think most weeks this is a pretty even matchup, and I think it's going to be a close game. I see no reason why Minnesota can't win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Minnesota here too. I just think they're the more talented team. Another thing about Minnesota is they're still kind of vying for a final playoff spot this year. We got the 3 wild cards instead of the 2 like we normally have. Chicago, the reason why I'm not going to take Chicago here is just because, look, this team is still a team without a quarterback. They started with Mitch and they went to Nick and then went back to Mitch. Mitch Trubisky is not a franchise quarterback, but I don't know if he's necessarily as bad as everyone likes to say that he is. If you look at his stats and his stats on everything, they're not atrocious, but it's just obvious he's not really going to be the guy there. So, Chicago, it just seems they're really kind of stuck in the losing mentality lately. I know they had the win against Houston, but I don't know. It's a little dicey. I like Dalvin Cook. I like Justin Jefferson, like we talked about before. I don't think either team is really that great, but because Minnesota has something else to play for and there's a little bit more on the line for them, I'm going to have to take Minnesota in this game. All right, so our next and final pick'em, it's Cleveland versus the Giants. The Giants trying to vie for the NFC East. Cleveland is, pretty supremely, firmly locked into a playoff position. Maybe they can win the division. I don't think so, but what do you guys think about that matchup? We'll start off with Dylan.
Well, as promised, I'll give you my prediction of what happens in the NFC East, including this week. So I picked Washington to beat Seattle. I'm going to take Cleveland to beat the Giants this week. No surprise. They're just a better team, just the way it is. So that would put Washington 2 games ahead of the Giants.
It's over then.
Right? What?
It's over then, I feel, right? If they go up 2 games, you would think that division's over.
I think the Giants win out and then Washington loses out and the Giants get the tiebreaker.
Really?
Yep. That's my prediction. And until something otherwise happens, I think I'm right. So I'm going to take Cleveland.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened because that's just the NFC East. Like they would obviously choke away the 2-game lead with 2 games left. I'm actually going to take the Giants in this one. I usually never pick Cleveland because I just feel like they're a team that, I feel like they're not 100% for real. And I think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're going to go much farther than first or second round. And last week I picked them. I was like, okay, they're gonna win this game, and then they lose. I know it was a close game, great game, but they do lose. So I'm gonna go with the Giants here to try to go off picking them again. I really like how the Giants are playing, And I feel like they're going to probably play a low-scoring game. I think the defense is going to be able to at least contain Baker Mayfield. I know he's playing well, but I feel like the defense has done a good job against really good quarterbacks like Russell Wilson. I feel like Colt McCoy does just enough. I mean, I'm kind of a Colt McCoy fan. I watched that game against when they beat Seattle, and I was like, this guy's not half bad. So I'll take the Giants.
I'm going to go with Cleveland in this one for a few reasons. Number one, Colt McCoy was okay against Seattle, but keep in mind, Seattle, as I mentioned several times already today, very poor defense, despite what Jamal Adams, my former favorite player, now least favorite player, might tell you. Seattle's defense is not good. So I think that part of the reason why. Cleveland's just a better team. Baker Mayfield tends to capitalize on playing weaker opponents. Now the Giants defense is good, but they don't have James Bradberry this week. They kind of maybe a little bit worried. The players, I don't know if they're worried about COVID because you got some coaches got COVID, and Jason Garrett has COVID, so that's going to impact the offense. So, I don't really know what's going to go on there. Cleveland's a better team. I know Cleveland's defense something to write home about. It did not look good against Baltimore the other night on Monday night. But I think you got Myles Garrett there. The Giants' offensive line is not that good, and Andrew Thomas. He's not my guy, Mekhi Becton. I'll tell you that. He's not a brick wall at left tackle. So, I think Myles Garrett might be able to capitalize. The Giants, and I'm sorry, Giants fans, I don't think you're winning the NFC East. I like Washington. I think, both Washington and the Giants have weak offenses and really good defenses, except the Washington's defense is a little bit stronger. And if you give me any of the quarterbacks, whether it be Colt McCoy, Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones, or Alex Smith, who hopefully is back next week, is the best of all four of them. He has experience. He's a winner. And, it's a great comeback story. That's another, topic to get into sometime. But, I'm going to go with Cleveland in this one. I just think they're the better team.
We've got one last segment of one-on-one before Christmas Day. And in this final segment, when you come back, we're going to talk a little bit about sports on Christmas Day, what you'll be watching, what we'll be watching, what we'll all be watching. We'll be back in just a second here on One-on-One. Stick around.
To support the WFUV Sports Department, visit support.wfuv.org to become a member or make a one-time donation. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Back for our final 17 or so minutes of One-on-One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. WFUV 90.7, WFUV.org, WFUVsports.org, Facebook, YouTube. I'm getting really tired of saying all those things together. It's a real mouthful. But nevertheless, I'm here. I'm Dylan Balsamo. Andrew Galata and Mike Legan are also here. We got one last thing we want to do. As you know, Christmas is coming up, and there's going to be a big handful of games on Christmas Day. So I thought what we would do, the three of us, would give our chances of each of these games, our chances of watching them. So Andrew, I'll start with you. Our first game is we'll look at the NBA. The Pelicans and the Heat are playing on Christmas Day. That's a pretty good game. Chance, you watching that game?
Yes, like for me with the NBA is on Christmas Day, it's usually not like the caliber of teams. It's like, well, it's kind of scheduling around when you're going to eat, you know? It's like, it depends if it's 12 o'clock, like, yeah, I'll probably watch the early game because like that's before, you usually eat. And it's like, it doesn't matter who it is. This should be a good matchup. You got Zion, you got Jimmy Butler. It should be a fun game for sure. You got a young team in the Pelicans, but it's like, I feel like this one's pretty high. I feel like, it'd probably be maybe on in the background, maybe kind of like something like that. I feel like it's a pretty good game. That's just kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to me and NBA on Christmas, typically like, we're going to family, we're traveling. So I can't say I watch the early game, I'm still in my house. And then, the other games will be on in the background as we're, hanging out with family and, going all over the state and, what have you. But this year, obviously very different. We're COVID, we're going to be home. It's just going to be me and my immediate family. So probably be more locked into these games. So I'll say at a minimum, I'm going to have all these games on. Whether or not I'm paying attention to every, play is another thing. Pelicans Heat, yeah, I'm going to watch, look, Zion did not play enough last year for me to really get a good taste of him. And I would really like to see him play some more this year. So, I mean, that's one thing. Brandon Ingram is becoming a star in this league. I want to see him play. And the Heat, look, they came out of the East last year, played in the finals. I don't think they're going to go back, but it should be a good matchup.
Yeah, look, I'm excited to see Zion. The Heat, of course, reigning Eastern Conference champs. They're good. There's a good chance of me watching this game. I'm going to give it 80% chance of me watching this game in particular. It's going to be 80%. All right, so let's move on. We got a lot to cover. Warriors Bucks. What do you think?
So for me, like my brother's a Warriors fan, so this will probably be high. And he's a big Steph Curry fan, and he thinks even sometimes Steph Curry's better than LeBron. He's sometimes feeling it when Curry was winning those championships, which I definitely don't agree with. So it's definitely those arguments are interesting, and I'll be tuned into this one to see what happens. Maybe Giannis is a big day. I'll be rooting for him against the Warriors.
Yeah, I would say, definitely gonna have it on. Whether I'm down, that's another thing. But the later games are more intriguing to me. This game is still somewhat interesting. Unfortunately, look, I'm a LeBron fan. I've always been a LeBron fan. He's my guy. He's my favorite NBA player of all time. So I have no love for the Warriors, needless to say, and I have no love for Steph Curry. So can't really say that I'll be rooting for them. You got Giannis off the Supermax deal. I mean, does that change at all how he's going to play Christmas? Probably be dialed in either way. Also a new look team, Drew Holiday's there now from Milwaukee. What's the dynamic there? So I think I'm going to put this at 60% chance that I'm fully locked into this game.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of headlines going on this game. Obviously, the Warriors at any time are fun to watch. Giannis is fun to watch. I'm going to give this 75%. This is a 75% chance of me watching this game. All right, so you just talked about LeBron. Let's talk about the Lakers because they're playing on Christmas Day. They're playing the Mavericks. The Mavericks. Mike, we'll start with you this time. What are the odds of you watching this game?
100%. I will be watching this game. Now, like I said, I'm a big LeBron guy, and I'm a Knicks fan technically. But of my rooting interest, the Knicks are probably lowest on my list. I don't, scream and yell over them as I would a Met or Jet game, but I'm a Knicks fan. I like the Knicks. So, but when it comes to players, LeBron's my guy, like I said. So wherever he goes, I'm watching. I'm not a Lakers fan, but if he's going to play for the Lakers like he has for the past few years, I'm rooting for the Lakers. I want to see, this team come off the championship. What I'm really intrigued about, and this isn't just the Lakers, it's probably more the league as a whole, especially teams that made deep playoff runs. This offseason was almost non-existent. They had almost no rest. This is the shortest span of time they've had between, the end of the season and the start of the season in terms of rest. It feels like, it was just a few months ago that we were crowning the champion. Now we're back on the court playing full-time games. So I'd be really interested to see how their bodies hold up. I would guess that, for these teams like the Lakers or the Clippers or, maybe not so much the Heat, but, the Bucks maybe, well, they didn't go that far, but I could see the teams resting a lot of players early in the season, especially the big name players, doing a lot of load management because there really wasn't a lot of off season. The Lakers also had some additions this year with, Dennis Schroeder and Marc Gasol. And so I really, I'd be interested to see the new dynamic. So 100% going to watch this game, and I hope to see LeBron put it on a show.
So I would say in usual years, it would probably be pretty high because usually, I mean, the Saints are playing on Christmas this year, probably be right around that time. So like I'm watching the Saints game 100%, obviously, and then everything else would be 0. And also maybe if it just ends, I'm a type of fan. I love watching the post games, love looking at the stats. So I won't be dialed in on probably any game until maybe that late game, that Clippers Nuggets game at 10:30. That's a big enough layoff. But I would say for any game between like 4 and like 8:30, it's a no-go for me.
That's fair. That's fair. No, but love watching LeBron. Mavs are a good team. I'm gonna give this one 73% is gonna be my percentage for this one. But let's stick around in the NBA. Nets Celtics. This is gonna be a good matchup. Two teams that are gonna compete in the East this year. Mike, what do you think?
Well, first, before I get to my likelihood to watch it, first off, I'm probably going to watch this game. I put it about 80% just because pure interest, but kind of say it is hilarious to me that the Nets have two of the best players in the NBA and nobody cares. Like people in New York, I'm an avid listener of WFAN. I'll occasionally, like once in like a lifetime, tune into ESPN 98.7. No one talks about the Nets. Nobody calls in to talk about the Nets, and they have Kevin Durant and Kyrie, and nobody cares. And that is hilarious to me. Meanwhile, we got the Knicks. They got Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quickley, these younger guys that just drafted, and they got Mitchell Robinson, all this guys. They get more hype and more talk, and that's just the funniest thing to me. I understand the Nets are always going to be the little brother in this town. The Jets and the Mets, they're little brothers too, but they still get a decent share of the New York market. The Nets, nobody cares, and I can't, as a New Jersey guy, I can't say, I feel like most of their fans are from Jersey and probably were hurt they left all those years ago. So it's hilarious to me that nobody cares. But that's not the point. The point is I'll probably watch this game just because I do want to see KD fully back from the injury. Kyrie, I got to be honest, the more this guy does his shenanigans, the more I don't care for him, especially saying he won't talk to the media. I mean, grow up, will you please? Can you? I understand that he's had some challenges in his life. I fully appreciate that. He's done a lot of great stuff for social justice, which I fully endorse, and that's awesome. But like some of these shenanigans, throwing incense around the garden and saying the earth is flat, like Kyrie, can you please just do the things that are good and stop doing these crazy things? Like be more like LeBron, please, who does a great job on and off the court, but I don't know, but I'll probably watch this game. I put it at 80%.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring that up because I think the Nets are a really interesting team because that dynamic is just, to me, so weird. I mean, it's like you would think more people would talk about it, but they're not. And I feel like, again, this is right going up against that Saints game, so 0% chance I'll be watching the Saints. But I wish this game was on at 8 or after the Saints game or whatever, because I really want to see this matchup because I want to see how this Nets team looks. I'm very intrigued because they could either be really good and they could be a team that challenges the Lakers in the Eastern Conference, as I said before, or they could kind of flame out and injuries happen and all that stuff. It's going to be, to me, their season is one of the most interesting in the NBA. And I agree with you. It's kind of interesting. No one's talking about them.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this game because it'd be really exciting, but I've already devoted such high percentages to all the other games. I'm going to have to.
You got to eat somewhere.
Only going to be 66%. I'm sorry. There's only so much of me, So looking forward to watching 66% of the game. One more NBA matchup we want to talk about. That's Clippers, Nuggets. That should be a good one too. Galata, what do you think?
I'll be tuned into this one. I'll give it 80. I think that's fair. I feel like this is a really good game. I feel like the Clippers, they've kind of been this roller coaster ride. So, to watch them, watch a few stars and, watching Jokic play and those guys there, that Nuggets team, very, very interesting team to watch. And what they did last year in the bubble, I thought that was, they were definitely the underdog team, win a lot of games, come back. It was really entertaining to watch. So this one should definitely be good.
Yeah, I would say I'm going to put this one a little bit lower. I'm going to go about 15%. I'm just not a fan of really either team. Clippers, Kawhi is an amazing player, but nothing really excites me just about this game. The Nuggets are fine, but you just got to think about it logically. We're going towards the end of Christmas Day here. Later in the evening, I'll be watching sports all day already. By this point, I'm probably be sportsed out. I'm probably going to be watching a movie, maybe a Christmas movie, a Christmas classic like Die Hard would be a good choice on this day. but you can only watch so many sports in a day at a certain point. And I can envision myself now just switching gears here, watching something else. But at a minimum, when it comes to this game, high likelihood I have it on in the background, if that counts.
I'm really stretched here because all these games I want to see, but like I keep devoting too much percentage to other games. So this one's it's gonna be 40%. I'm sorry. There's only so much of me that can go around. So 40%, unfortunately. But let's talk about that's the NBA. But college basketball also has some highlights on Christmas Day. Specifically, the Big Ten has a couple big games that we'd like to talk about. So first, Wisconsin, Michigan. Legan, let's start with you. What are your odds of this game?
All right, so I'll start off by saying, so it's Wisconsin, Michigan State. I'm a big fan of Tom Izzo as a coach, so that does draw me in to watch the game. But I got to be perfectly honest. So first off, these games are going to be competing with the NBA, and I understand it's NBA regular season, but it's Christmas NBA, which is like Thanksgiving football. It's just you got to watch. And on top of that, unless it's the NCAA tournament, or Fordham somehow miraculously becomes good, which who knows, but when you're going up against the NBA and you got football, later afternoon, evening, NFL is always my favorite, favorite league. Football is my favorite sport. It's even though I enjoy college basketball because they play defense, unlike the NBA, and I like the tenacity of players in college. Very low likelihood. I'm going to go 5% that I watch any of this, unfortunately.
I see. Here's the thing. I mean, college basketball, I do like watching college basketball. I feel like the only game that I would probably tune in over the NBA would be the Wisconsin-Michigan State game because two highly ranked teams, and I'm a fan of Big Ten basketball. I think well played, play defense, and I feel like the kind of the quality is better at times, especially when you talk about the number 12 team in the country and the number 4 team in the country. So I would say that it's a toss up between that Pelicans game and this Wisconsin team. But besides that, I'll probably be tuning into the Saints or the NBA. I mean, that's just, I feel like that's kind of the nature of it.
I mean, I love college basketball. I love Wisconsin, love Michigan State. So I will, let's see here, carry the 4. I'm going to give it a 62.8% chance that I watch this game. That's going to be, my math is right. Oh, excuse me, 62.7% chance. All right, so let's talk about Michigan, Nebraska. Galata, thoughts?
I don't have much thoughts on it. I mean, it's on at 6 o'clock. Let's put it this way. It's on at 6 o'clock. That's prime time for NBA, NFL, and it's just something it's not two highly ranked teams, and I feel like all college sports this year has kind of just been crazy. Just like, I mean, even like the level of competition, I feel like it's just like you don't know what you're going to get because between COVID and the no off season, and again, these are just college students. So if they're going in with no off season, not practicing a lot, and then you put the COVID thing on top of that, it's difficult. So I don't know. I would say 5%, probably 0. I mean, not even 5, 0.
Yeah, to all the Wolverines and Cornhuskers out there, I hate to break it to you, but this will be a whopping 0% chance for me. At least with Michigan State, I like to watch them, so I'm kind of drawn in by that. But here, I don't care for Michigan and I don't care for Nebraska. I'm sorry. And since you're going up against the NBA, whopping 0, and NFL, whopping 0% for that one for me.
This is some crazy long division, but I've decided 56.6%. That's the odds for this one. All right, real quick, we got a couple minutes left. There's one more game we want to talk about. That is in the NFL. Galata, your Saints will be taking on the Vikings on Christmas Day. Tell me what your percentage is and why is it 100?
Yeah, so here are a few things to say about this. I mean, obviously, look, I'm going to be watching this game very intently, but I don't really like when my teams play on holidays, and the Saints have done it a few times with Thanksgiving over the last few years. They played the Falcons 2 years in a row back-to-back, and I mean, like, the Mets obviously always play on, like, Easter because, I mean, every MLB team does usually, and it's just something like you got to juggle a lot of things. You got to be with family. Like, I want to focus on the game. Like, I want to watch all this stuff, and especially Saints-Vikings. It's probably going to be a really close game, and just with the playoff history with the Saints versus the Vikings, I'm scared as hell against them. What happened with the Minnesota Miracle, and then now last year the Saints put up a dud. I mean, definitely it's going to be glued to the television. I think it'll be a close game. It's just because I feel like when the Saints and Vikings meet, and Mike Zimmer, Sean Payton, they have, they go back. They used to be assistant coaches together when they were under Bill Parcells. So I feel like this is definitely those two. They always go up against each other with chess matches. Always a close game. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, real quickly, definitely 100%. I'll be flipping between that and the Laker game. Just briefly, Andrew, you say you don't like it when your teams play on holidays. Nobody has more of a reason to hate your football team playing on a holiday than me, because let me tell you, 2 Jet games on a holiday. Number 1, the butt fumble game, Thanksgiving against the Patriots. Number 2, Victor Cruz, 99 yards on Christmas Eve, knocking the Jets out of the playoff contention in 2011. So 100% going to watch, going to flip between that and the Lakers. And looking forward to a good game.
Let's see. Hold on one second. I got to calculate a natural log. All right, 84.39% chance that I watch. Well, gentlemen, this has been a wonderful show. Thank you for coming along with me on this ride. And thank you to everyone watching for coming along with us. This has been a wonderful show. We want to give our thanks to Patricia Traina, Julie DiCaro, Jane McManus, Mike Nastri, our guests today, our producer, Alex Woles, who is responsible for everything FUV Sports has been able to do since the pandemic hit. One-on-One, of course, is a production of WFUV Sports. The director of WFUV Sports is Bobby Chaffardini. On behalf of Andrew Galata and Michael Legan on headlines, my name is Dylan Balsamo. Please get some sleep. And while the merry bells keep ringing, happy holidays to you. Good night.